Yeah, I would say that the times I get pictures of these, it's either from another meteorologist or somebody who's very weather savvy and kind of knows what they're seeing. Because as you mentioned, most people, I'm sure Claire saw this, and everyone around her is like, what are you taking a picture of right now? It's just one of those things, if you know what you're looking at, you kind of see it. But on that same vein, I got a great video today from the beach. I'm sure you got some because you used to work down in the Wilmington area, but down for Topsail Island, I got from one of our viewers, there was a ton of waterspouts offshore today. In this video, it's actually a video sent to me from, I remember his name, I gave him credit because in case he's watching, Jordan Bumgarner sent this to me. So this is on my laptop, Jeb, and we'll play this. This was actually a video he sent to me of a pretty good waterspout offshore. But what you can't tell here is this is one of like 7 waterspouts he said. He saw when you saw the lightning strike there while that was going on. But there was quite a few waterspouts out there. And just like the cold air funnels, Tim, these aren't tornadoes per se. They technically could be if they come ashore, but they form from a completely different mechanism from supercell tornadoes, or what we sometimes refer to as tornadic waterspouts, which are actually just tornadoes over water. This is because the water's cooler, or really warm, and the air above is slightly cooler, and you get some instability. And you get these at the coast all the time, and it's pretty cool to see these during the summer.
And a lot of times when you see these, they don't move all that much. So they're kind of just able to be viewed for a while. Now, we should say you should treat these with respect. If they are moving your way, you got to get out of the way. But 9 times out of 10, they stay out there over the ocean. But yeah, like you said, they form in a different way off of these instability currents, the rising airs that you can have over the water. They're actually pretty common in the Great Lakes in the fall, where you have relatively warmer air still left over from the summertime, and you start to get those big cold air masses moving in. You can see a lot of these up that way, but it's a lot more comfortable to view them in topsail when it's nice and warm outside and you're in your beach chair and off they go. But that's a pretty cool view. And with the lightning strike, too, that's something pretty impressive. Probably was hanging out pretty close to the Gulf Stream.
Yeah, that's probably what you're looking at offshore there. And a lot of folks, you got to respect those, especially if you're in a small boat. You don't want to be anywhere near the base of those things. Yes. Sometimes you see people taking a run at those every once in a while. Before we finish up the show today, I know you got one more image I think you were going to talk about. We had some nice sunrises and sunsets the last couple of days, and we get things called crepuscular rays and anti-crepuscular rays, or technically shadows. If you get those pictures, send us. We're out of time, Tim. We can't even show it. But if you get those great sunset pictures, send them to us.
Tease.
Maybe we could talk about those tomorrow, Tim. This show always goes so quickly. Stick around, though. Vanessa Rufus is coming up next with more Impact News.
Hey folks, thanks so much for sticking with us here. This is Live Impact News. I'm your host, Vanessa Rufus. We'll be together for the next couple of hours. Want to get to a couple of our top headlines on the local front. Jeb, I just want to flag you. Looks like the president is coming out of Air Force One. So stand by. We'll have a feed in just a moment. We do have a train crash to talk about, though, out of Rock Hill. Folks in the area dealing with a lot of closures, and a situation sounds absolutely terrible. Train hit a pedestrian today. This afternoon, just before noon, in fact, is when the crash happened. Roadways blocked in the area for quite some time. This is East Main Street and East White Street. We're still trying to figure out exactly how the person who was struck is doing and how this accident came to happen. However, we're getting a few details, not only from police, but also from Norfolk Southern, which operates this line. Norfolk Southern telling us that that incident happened once again around 10:30. Pedestrian involved, no crew members hurt. We're still waiting to hear once again how the pedestrian is doing and maybe why they were on or near that track. So we mentioned we've got a live image for you in the bottom right. This is President Trump as he is arriving in the United States following a 4-day trip overseas. We know he had been doing some dealings in Scotland and also taking some time to talk about his golf course out there. So you can see there he looks like he just got off of Air Force One, is now boarding, looks like Marine One. Joint Base Andrews is where this feed is. As we get more information out of here and we're able to pop back into this feed in full, we'll do that, but it looks like he's actually about to take off from the chopper there. So with that, let's turn to our next headline. We've got for you a terrible story that we've been following since this weekend. Our Jesse Pierre has been keeping up to date with the very latest on this crash on 45 in West Charlotte from Saturday. Sadly, this is the one that took the lives of 6 people, including 5 members of the same family, and it left a 16-year-old girl fighting for her life tonight. We got an update from Jesse. A couple things of note here. Apparently the daughter, the girl here, the teen, is doing better. The mom is giving us this information. She's starting to walk a little bit, but of course, really traumatic situation that they're just trying to wrap their minds around at this time. The other thing we're learning, NTSB getting involved in the situation with an investigation on a federal level. Here's Jesse on what we know about that.
It's a deadly crash that left families shattered.
The world's turned upside down on us.
The National Transportation Safety Board, along with the North Carolina Highway Patrol, opened a safety investigation into Saturday's wreck that left 6 people dead.
Investigate, each of the drivers and what happened and, what caused the crash.
Authorities say a 16-year-old driver veered into a van with 6 people inside. Both vehicles then slammed into a parked tractor trailer. The teen and 5 people in the van were killed. A spokesperson with the NTSB says investigators could explore several potential safety issues like vehicle compatibility and driving experience. Brake's Defensive Driving School lead instructor Matt Riley says teens have the highest crash rates.
Just because lack of experience, lack of seat time, and so they'll look at that pretty heavily.
Investigators could also look at safety issues regarding the commercial truck parked on the highway's shoulder.
Clearly into that shoulder, that safety shoulder, did he have his flashers on? Did he have his safety triangles out?
All right, and we will definitely keep an eye on this story and let you know what we find, not only from the reports, the investigations that are underway, but also how that teen in the hospital is doing with her recovery. The other issue that we've been watching throughout the day is this apartment fire, and we can tell you tonight at this very moment, Red Cross is assisting multiple folks following this morning fire, which sounds like it was an absolute nightmare for neighbors in the sense that many of them told us that they awoke to smoke and they were rushing out, and there were some folks who say that they were even concerned about getting out safely because not everybody who is in the area is actually able-bodied and able to get out very quickly and easily. Nevertheless, no one was seriously hurt here. Red Cross is helping folks who do not have a place to stay. This happened in East Charlotte this morning, English Hills Drive, kind of in the area of East WT Harris Boulevard and Albemarle Road. We'll let you know as there is a cause that's revealed, but as we stand tonight, that information is not known. So that's a look at our top headlines for now. We'll always pop in with anything big and breaking as well. We, of course, had the president's shot for you just a moment ago. We're keeping an eye on some discussions as well on the aviation front. This is a really interesting story in the sense that, here in the Carolinas, this will hit close to home, although, in general, aviation safety is something that folks, across the nation are concerned about and thinking about. We've got some new legislation that's just been introduced here. There was an announcement discussing what's called this Rotor Act. And so what we're seeing here, Senator Ted Budd from North Carolina joining Ted Cruz and other folks today, including the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, to talk about this legislation introduced specifically related to that mid-air collision that happened in D.C. earlier this year, happened back in January. And you'll remember that the flight crew on that plane was a Charlotte-based flight crew. We actually hear from the family members of the pilot, Sam Lilly. His mother and father spoke at the announcement of this Rotor Act. Once again, Rotor, this is an acronym, but stands for Rotorcraft Operations Transparency and Oversight Reform Act, and it's meant to address ongoing concerns in aviation safety in the national capital region and around the country. Let's take a listen.
Again, thank you for your strength and courage to stand up and fight in the face of truly horrific loss. I now turn to Tim and Sherry Lilly, the parents of Sam Lilly, the first officer of Flight 52, for their words. Tim and Sherry.
Today marks 6 months from the most tragic event in our family's history. What we're doing here today is we're going to try to make sure that no other families have this tragic event happen. I want to especially thank Secretary Duffy, because when we met with him, he took our concerns, he took them to heart, he went to running with it. He showed compassion for not just our family, but for the entire traveling public. And so we're going to stick with him and see this thing through. We're going to modernize the air traffic control system. We're going to get all the air traffic controllers back on the job. And then I really want to thank Chairwoman Harmony. She has led the NTSB in one of the most difficult processes that's happened in years, and she's kept us informed. She's given us every opportunity to have a voice, and we just really appreciate that. From the day that we met with Chairman Cruz, he really set in motion that this is not going to be Sam's legacy to die in vain. 67 really great people lost their lives that night, and there's no reason for that. What we have here is legislation, if it's passed, is going to close some very important safety loopholes so that this never has to happen again.
Thank you so much, Chairman, for asking us to be here today and to take action out of our grief to avoid this type of tragedy from ever happening again. Both Chairman Cruz and Ranking Member Cantwell have been so compassionate and demonstrated such empathy for our families. We greatly appreciate the leadership that they have both demonstrated on this topic of aviation safety, not just for our families, but as Tim said, for the flying public, for everyone, whoever sets foot on a plane and flies in our national airspace. In addition, we're very, very thankful for the senators who came together with Chairman Cruz to sponsor the Rotor Act. We appreciate Senator Moran, Marshall, Schmidt, Blackburn, Budd, and Sheehy for their very demonstrated leadership also on this topic. This is a very personal matter for all of us, but we hope that by being here and sharing our story, you all buy into this also, and that you do support the efforts of the Secretary at the Department of Transportation, that you advocate for that additional funding that we need to update the air traffic control systems and all of the systems that control our national airspace. Thank you so much, everyone.
Sherry, Tim, thank you for your strong leadership at a time of great grief and pain. thank you for using that grief to try to protect the flying public, try to protect every one of us. I know every time now that I land at Reagan, including yesterday just getting here, I suspect I'm not the only one who looks out the window and thinks about what could happen, and we're acting today to protect the flying public going forward. I now want to introduce National Transportation Safety Board Chairwoman Jennifer Homendy to discuss her investigation and her efforts to identify the operational breakdowns and safety gaps in the airspace.
Well, as you heard, today marks 6 months to the day since 67 people died in a mid-air collision over the Potomac River near Ronald Reagan National Airport. That's 67 mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, children, friends, as well as 3 highly respected soldiers who dedicated their lives to defending our nation. I do want to thank Chairman Cruz, Chairman Moran, Secretary Duffy, certainly the administrator, and the families for your tireless and selfless work to improve aviation safety since this tragedy occurred. Tomorrow, the NTSB will meet in public.
Folks, we're going to come back to this press briefing on the Rotor Act in just a moment. Quickly pivoting, though, to a chat reporters had with President Trump just moments ago. Remember that live picture we showed top of the hour, him getting off the plane, Joint Base Andrews. He's answering some questions. Let's listen.
Sir Keir Starmer has just announced the UK will recognise Palestinian sovereignty in September if Israel does not commit to a ceasefire, ease the suffering in Gaza, and commit to a long-term solution that would deliver the two-state solution in the Middle East. Did you know that was coming?
No, we never discussed it, surprisingly. It was never really discussed. Maybe a little bit at the news conference, but he was sort of discussing it with you. We never did discuss it, and we have no view on that. We're going to get a lot of money to the area so they can get some food.
We apologize, folks, having some issues with the feed. If we can get that back, we will, and we appreciate your patience. With that, let's go ahead and, okay, I think we got it back. How do you feel, Jeb?
We're going to keep going.
Feels like it's going well. Let's go back to the president taking questions.
Hamas, if you do that, and I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are in, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas, and I'm not about to do that.
Mr. President, you mentioned setting up food centers. When can we expect to see
Very
those
soon.
food centers?
Yeah, very soon. So we sent $60 million. It's a lot of money for food, a lot of money that can take care of people for a long time. And we want to make sure it's being spent properly. And part of the spending is the distribution. If you know, a lot of money's been sent by other countries, but nothing compared to us. But a lot of things have been stolen. They send money, they send food, and Hamas steals it. So it's a tricky little game. But we're going to make sure we have some very good people. They're going to be watching it.
Who is going to be running those food centers for you, and what kind of oversight?
Well, we're going to be dealing with Israel, and we think they can do a good job of it. And they want to do it.
Of monitoring the food centers?
No, they want to do it. The food centers, yeah. They want to preside over the food centers to make sure the distribution is proper.
Mr. President, we all had a great time seeing that beautiful course, but there's some critics who say this was a promotional trip for you.
That it was what?
That it promoted you and your business personally. What do you say to that?
I haven't heard that, no. I haven't heard that. Did you get to see my drive in the first hole?
You hit it straight pretty high.
I did. Pretty long. Pretty long. That's no Joe Biden, let me tell you. That's not Biden, right? That was a good drive.
When did you last speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and when will you speak to him?
2 days ago.
How many?
2 days ago.
When do you think
I said, we sent money, and I want to make sure the money is spent wisely and is spent judiciously, and that food is distributed in a proper manner. And he wants to do that.
Mr. President, you've talked about moving Palestinians out of Gaza. You said that in the past. Do you still support that idea?
Well, it's a concept that some people fell in love with and some people don't. We really have to see how it all works out before we do that. But, you could do something spectacular, but that's a different concept. You could also probably do it if you left some. Some are leaving automatically, you know that. Some would like to leave. I think many would like to leave if they were given an alternative. They really have no alternative now. But certainly that was a concept that was really embraced by a lot of people. But also some people didn't like it.
Prime Minister Starmer, he was kind of critical of Israel and said more pressure needed to be put on Israel to allow food to get in at speed. Do you feel that Israel is a good?
I think Israel wants to do it. Actually, I think Israel wants to do that. They're going to want to, and I can tell you that they want to do it. They don't want Hamas stealing the money or stealing the food, and that's what they've been doing.
But do you think Israel can be trusted to allow more food in faster?
Look, I think Israel wants to do it, and they'll be good at doing it. If they do it, and if they really want to do it, and I think they do, they'll do a good job. The food will be properly.
There's a perception maybe that Keir Starmer didn't do so well in the press conference yesterday. Do you have any words of support for him?
I thought he did well in the press conference, and I thought, I think they made a good deal. I think we all made a good deal. Why, are you hearing otherwise? I guess.
Yeah.
You are.
I think the feeling is that he was maybe a little weak and didn't really have very strong answers and maybe wasn't entirely honest about free speech and immigration.
I don't know. I like him. I think he's good. I think he's a great representative for UK. I haven't heard that.
In your meeting with John Swinney today, did you offer to drop tariffs on Scotch whiskey?
No, we really didn't discuss it much, but I have a lot of respect for him.
Mr. President,
and I didn't have a lot of respect for the woman that preceded him. I thought she was terrible as the First Minister of Scotland. But I think John is doing a very good job as First Minister.
Mr. President, your Treasury Secretary and Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, China talks wrapped today. Any sort of reaction coming out of the meeting? They're extending the truce. Are you pleased with that?
I just had a phone call from Scott Bessent and had a very good meeting with China. And it seems that, they're going to brief me tomorrow. We'll either approve it or not. But he felt very good about the meeting. Better than he felt yesterday. Yesterday I said, "Ooh, here we go again. Here we go again." But today it worked out very well.
And
I think the result is probably
I
great.
saw a report from Reuters that India is preparing to face higher U.S. tariffs between 20 and 25%. Is that what you're tracking, or what do you think the rate will be for India?
That they are going to pay 25%.
That India is preparing to face higher U.S. tariffs between 20 and 25%.
Yeah, I think so. Look, India's they're my friends, and he's my friend. And, they ended the war with Pakistan at my request, and that was great. And Pakistan did also. We did a lot of great settlements, including the recent one, as you know, with Cambodia, So that was a great one. I think that's been pretty well finalized now, right?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Did I do a good job in that one? I did a good job in about 5 different wars. Do you think I'll get credit for it? No. Will I get credit for it? She'll say yes. No.
Is the deal with India finalized?
No, it's not.
Okay. So what rate are you expecting?
Well, we're going to see. We're going to see. But India's been a good friend. But India has charged basically more tariffs than almost any other country. You know that, right? Over the years. But now I'm in charge, and you just can't do that. I think the trade deals are working out very well, hopefully for everybody, but for the United States, they're very, very good.
Mr. President, the Wall Street Journal case, lawyers are seeking to depose Rupert Murdoch. Can you say what the lawyers hope to get out of that?
Oh, I don't know. We're going to see. It's in the lawyers' hands. I've been treated very unfairly by the Wall Street Journal and everything. I don't know. They even hired people from the Washington Post, third-rate reporters, gossip-type reporters. It's all gossip. And, you know, I've been treated badly by the Wall Street Journal. I would have assumed that Rupert Murdoch controls it, but, you know, maybe does, maybe doesn't. They are talking to us about doing something, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they would like us to drop that. And so we'll see.
Does that mean there's settlement talks?
Yeah, they want to settle it.
With money involved?
No, he's treated us wrong. I mean, you know, when I get treated unfairly, I do things about it. So we'll see what happens.
On Gaza last week, you were rather dismissive of President Macron when he recognised the Palestinian state. Today,
No,
you're
I'm
saying
not
you don't really.
dismissive. That's his opinion. You know, he can have an opinion. It doesn't mean I have to agree. Emmanuel's a good man. He works hard. Got a lot to say about everything.
But now you're saying you're not taking a view on Sir Keir Starmer's announcement. Does that mean you're
No, I guess Starmer is doing the same as Macron, right? He's basically, is he saying the same thing? I think so. Essentially, they're saying the same thing, and that's okay. But you know, it doesn't mean I have to agree.
Folks, we're just putting this up here in the bottom right corner of your screen, just monitoring. We don't have a lot of detail. Looks like LAFD crews are on scene of an uninjured but trapped window washer. Bear with us. A little bit of a glitch to the feed here and the signal from the chopper, but apparently there's a suspended basket in which this worker was working, and the malfunction is causing the person to not be able to get down. We'll continue to listen to the president in full, but this is at the bottom. If we get anything big, we'll pop back in full with this live feed of the trapped window washer in Los Angeles.
I was at the new Air Force One. When do you expect to be flying on the new
I think by, they say February maybe?
February.
Much sooner than the others. The others are being built. Long time build. That's a long time build. Now, they're not normal 747s. They, you know, have a lot of things on them that another plane wouldn't have. But we'll get this one a year and a half, 2 years earlier.
How much will it cost to retrofit it?
I don't know. It's up to the military. I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't been involved. It's their plane. It's, you know, the Air Force. They'll be spending an amount of money. You know, it is a different plane because it becomes for military use. So, but I don't know what the number is.
We'll get back to the president if we're able to, folks. We have a little bit of a development here out of Los Angeles, so we just want to get in full here now with this live feed, which shows it looks like that window washer hooked up to some safety equipment. Looks like they got a harness on the person, and they have them now carefully walking down this ladder truck escorted by a firefighter. As we mentioned before, this is happening in Los Angeles. There was a technical issue with the basket in which the person was working. The malfunction essentially kept that person trapped for a bit of time. The good news is you can kind of tell from the way they're moving, they are uninjured. And primary concern, getting the person down. And it sounds like the workers then will have to take a look at the equipment malfunction and see exactly what happened and maybe how they can get that piece of equipment back down from this high-rise building. So once again, LAFD on scene as this window washer is now coming down the ladder. A bit of a glitch with the signal from the chopper there. We'll try to get back to that. We still have the president taking questions from reporters. I think, what do we feel like here in the sense of which feed is looking good, Jeb? Okay, we've stabilized the LA feed. There we go. Just a bit of a wider look. The person's almost down the ladder. And, well, goodness gracious, it froze up. Let's get to the president, Jeb. Thanks for bearing with us.
They're going to keep her in the car, and she's going to be in a freighter.
Well, you tell me the details.
Those freighters that don't have, you know.
He was going to keep her in the car. Tell us how it was going to work.
I don't want to get involved, but it's a strange story. I just heard that one.
Mr. President, you said that you were going to set the new...
The British farmers are so grateful for what you said yesterday about the importance of farming, because we have changed inheritance tax, death taxing.
Well, farmers are so important. So farmers are, you know, they liked what I said on a couple of things yesterday. They liked what I said for the farm. I'm a big farmer person. I love the farmers. I think they're great. And we have to steer the laws so the farmers don't get hurt in our country and in their country. But Europe has a big immigration problem. But they also liked when I said that They have one of the worst mayors anywhere in the world in London. He's a horrible mayor, nasty guy, stupid guy in my opinion, but he's a nasty man, and I want nothing to do with him. But I didn't think it was a big statement, and so many people said thank you for saying that. He's a bad guy. Khan is his name, I guess. He's done a lousy job, I can tell you that. A terrible mayor.
Mr. President,
No, but people liked it so much when I said that.
Mr. President, yesterday you mentioned that you would change the Russia deadline to 10 to 12 days. Has that started yet, or when can we, see the official statement that is the new deadline?
I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you now. Do you want a big scoop?
Yes, please.
Everybody else, close your ears, okay? You ready?
I'm ready.
10 days from today.
Got it.
Okay?
Got it.
Good.
Have you communicated?
We have a scoop. And then, we're going to put on tariffs and stuff, and I don't know if it's going to affect Russia, because he wants to obviously probably keep the war going. But we're going to put on tariffs and the various things that you put on. It may or may not affect them, but it could.
Are you working with any of the families of the victims of the Manhattan shooting?
I don't want to tell you that. I don't want to tell you that.
Have you spoken with Mayor Adams?
That's a very, boy, that's a bad one. That's a bad one, but I won't tell you about that.
Have you talked to Mayor Adams? Have you spoken with Mayor
I
Adams?
have, yeah.
One of the other things our readers liked from yesterday was when you were talking so forcefully about illegal immigration in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
One of the big political flashpoints is migrant hotels, where people are being put up while their claims are processed. People see it as a source
In beautiful
of
luxury hotels.
They also think there's low security and it's a problem for their communities. Is that appropriate, or does Britain need an alligator Alcatraz?
It's not alligator. It's just that they're putting people in luxury hotels, and other people that are working their asses off are living, from hand to mouth. They're not living the same way. I mean, I looked at some of the hotels they're using, and they've done it in our country also. They'd put them in like the best hotels anywhere in the world because they could get rooms there, thousands of dollars a night, and other people are living out on the streets, including our veterans. They can't get a room. Our veterans are living on the streets. There are pictures of our veterans saying right by the door where they're walking in to live, and the veterans are sitting out on the sidewalk in front of a fancy hotel, and the illegals are coming into that hotel and staying there for a week. It's no good.
Just to button up on Mar-a-Lago, you're saying that Jeffrey Epstein poached 2 of your staffers. Who were they?
Yeah, I don't want to say 2, or I don't want to say any number. You're talking about many years ago. But yeah, he took people, and because he took people, I say, don't do it anymore. They work for me. And he took, beyond that, he took some others. And once he did that, that was the end of him. I didn't like, when they steal people, I don't like it.
Did anybody ever go to prison for a social media post?
Are you saying that that's taking place in the UK?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing that. Well, I looked at him yesterday. Well, they said they canceled Truth Social. I'll bet it's uncanceled very quickly. I'll bet it's uncanceled. Yeah. No, it's a little different. It's different. I see it in some countries that you would never suspect it. Not only there. I've seen it in other countries where, they're like bread and pudding countries, I think, and then all of a sudden they become somewhat violent. When people go socialistic, or when you get the radical left or the left going in, the countries actually become very mean. They become 2 things, mean and incompetently run simultaneously. How is Caroline doing? Is she doing a good job? Look at her. She's such a star. Come on, Caroline. Come here.
Chloe wanted to watch, sir.
Oh, Chloe, do you want to come over? Chloe is she's a great golfer, a great talented golfer. She's probably the most talented golfer other than Kai, but I think it's about the same, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
She hits the ball long. This little girl has a lot of muscle, right?
Yeah.
So, and she wins every tournament she plays in of her age.
Had a fun weekend?
Yes, very fun.
You love golf, right?
Yes.
But she's a great athlete.
How did the golf course play today? And be
Great.
honest, did anyone in your foursome hit that massive bunker on the night?
That is a massive bunker. Fortunately, nobody did. Well, I played 2 of the guys who were pros and really good players. One of them won the tournament last year, and you can see they were very good players.
Who at the moment holds the course record?
Well, we played a first round. That's it. We only played one round. This was our first round, so I'd have to go into that exactly. But they're two really good players. One of them, is the one who, the story. Beam. You know who that is? So he took Tiger. I guess 18 holes. Tiger, went wild with his putting, meaning he started dropping putts from all over the place, and Tiger took him. But that's the quality. They're really good players. We had those two guys and terrific guys, two terrific guys. We had.
All right, folks. Once again, you're seeing a question and answer session essentially with the president as he arrived back in the United States following a 4-day trip overseas. We saw, of course, coverage of that in recent days over in Scotland as he had some dealings and spoke with world leaders over there, and also took some time to highlight his golf course in Scotland. We want to turn now to a public forum that is underway as we speak, and this is coming to us out of Cincinnati. This is also coming in the wake of a weekend brawl, which is actually going viral as videos are now circulating on social media, really getting national attention. At last check, we're seeing 5 people being charged in this brawl in the downtown area. One thing that the police in the area said was the concerning thing, in addition to the brawl itself, was the fact that 100 people are apparently present in this area at the time. Only one person called 911. This public safety forum with the community present looks like it's just now wrapping up. Good news is, folks, we actually recapped and rolled on the beginning portion of this, primarily where we were getting information from police on how they plan to address public safety moving forward in Cincinnati. Take a listen.
Testing. 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 Better. Thank you, everyone. One more second before we get started, just for everyone to gather their settings and seats if you have a seat. All right, it is 6:01. We'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Andrew Knabb, and I have the honor of serving as president of the Downtown Residents Council, the formal community council serving Cincinnati Central Business District. On behalf of our board and our newly formed Public Safety Committee, I want to welcome you to tonight's special community meeting, organized by the community for our downtown community. In respect of that, we ask that everyone be respectful of tonight, respectful of our speakers, and respectful of each other. We are grateful to see so many of you here. It speaks to the level of concern and care that residents, business owners, and stakeholders share about the future and safety of our livability in our downtown. We also thank the many community leaders and city council members in attendance, as well as guests tuning in, and neighbors and civic partners, including council members Albee, Owens, Cramerding, Jeffries, and County Prosecutor Connie Tillage. Tonight's forum comes in response of Month of Concern brought to the DRC by our residents, business owners, and neighborhood leaders across the Central Business District. Our goal is simple: to provide a space where community members can hear directly from civic leadership, ask meaningful questions, and participate in respectful dialogue in shaping the solutions that will impact our Central Business District and urban core. We are honored to be joined by 4 individuals whose leadership is essential to these efforts, including Mayor Akhtab Purball, City Manager Cheryl Long, Cincinnati Police Chief Teresa Fiji, and 3CBC President and CEO Steve Leeper. Our event format: we will begin with presentations from our panelists, who will speak for the next 45 minutes. They've been provided a set of community-submitted questions in advance that was submitted by DRC residents and stakeholders, which may help guide their remarks. Following their presentations, we will move into a moderated question and answer period. During the program, we ask attendees to write down their questions and indicate to which panelists they would be directed to. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Just recentering ourselves for the evening. Following the presentation, we will move into a moderated question and answer period. During the program, we ask you as attendees, prioritizing our downtown residents and stakeholders, to write down your questions and to indicate to which panelist the question is directed to. The Downtown Residents Council team, led by Chase Mozajowski, our Vice President. Chase, can you raise your hand? Sue Byram. Sue, can you raise your hand and stand? And Jim Beering, our Downtown Residents Council. Jim, can you stand and raise your hand? I don't see Jim, but Jim is around, I promise. Thanks, Jim. Jim is in the back. The DRC team will collect and read these questions, allowed to help maintain a respectful, focused, and concise conversation. Thank you again for your presence this evening. With that, I would like to turn it over to our panelists and Mayor Aftab-Kirval to begin with opening remarks. Thank you, and please remember to be silent so all attendees can hear. Thank you again. And please silence your phones if able. Thank you. There was one question that we just received. If you do have questions, there are note cards in the back that we ask, along with pens, that if you wish to grab note cards while the presentations are ongoing, please do so, and we'll collect your questions as they come. Thank you.
We have a stool. A little short. Okay. Something. All right. Yeah, read it. Okay. I'm not running. I will talk to Good afternoon. Good evening. Right? We're talking about evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I do have a loud voice, and it carries. So that's why I'm in the role I am, because I talk very loud in the room. Okay, so good evening. Thank you, Downtown Residents Council, for inviting us to be here tonight to speak directly to our citizens and address some of your concerns. Thank you all for being here. Chief Fiji will speak about police interventions in a moment, but I'm going to begin by talking about our violence reduction blueprint. You all care. That's why you're here. You could be doing anything else, but you are here learning about what we're trying to do, and we are appreciative of that. Okay, really, Molly? So Act for Cincy is a comprehensive strategy to prevent violence, in particular gun violence, by addressing root causes through a public health approach. Act for Cincy provides us with a framework to invest in long-term solutions while being flexible to add new initiatives to respond to new challenges. Act for Cincy is based on 5 pillars. They are thriving neighborhoods, reduced accessibility of firearms for youth, improved well-being, improved youth support, evidence-based policing innovations. I'll go into a little bit more detail. We know blight and disinvestment contribute to poverty and crime rates. Thriving neighborhoods is about driving economic development and community investments to revitalize and problem solve at a grassroots level. This includes funding through boots on the ground, safe and clean, and the Human Service Fund. We have teams who are regularly out in the community, cleaning up trash, painting over graffiti, and beautifying community spaces to make sure they are safe for our residents to use. These same organizations are investing in workforce development and gun violence reduction at a grassroots level. It takes a comprehensive approach with everyone at the table taking part in the solution to achieve real, lasting change. A critical component to this work is reducing the accessibility of firearms to kids. We do this in several ways, including using innovative technology at our crime gun intelligence center, encouraging safe firearm stores and providing free gun locks, lobbying our state and federal partners to change policy to allow common sense legislation that will reduce gun violence. We are in an environment where everyone has a gun. It is easier to get a gun than it is for some kids to go to a movie theater. How can we work in collaboration and what we are doing with our state and federal partners to make sure that we are raising to their attention the things that cities are facing firsthand? And where we can, we're passing local laws to ensure responsible gun ownership. We have done that, and at times, we have got challenged by the Supreme Court. But the effort is still something that policymakers are doing. At Cincy, also focused on improved mental health and emotional well-being. We are seeing, coming out of 2020 and even before, there are a lot of people suffering from mental health. Last year, we introduced the Hope and Shield Network, our hospital-based violence intervention program by UC Health and Cincinnati Children's, which is an immediate touch point with gunshot victims to interrupt the cycle of violence. When they are at the hospital, are suffering from gun violence, when they are shot, that is the best time to give them that choice to see. Are you ready to get access to services to change your life? We are trying to prevent those from re-offending, to being a victim again. That is important. So supporting the victims and witness of gun violence while working with Karen Rumsey and her team at CPD, this is important to protect all of our loved ones. And our Cincinnati Recreation Commission staff and CPD youth services officers are undergoing trauma-informed care, training to be better, meet the needs of the community they serve. We have to be careful with every touch that we have with the people that we are servicing, because we have no clue what they have been dealing with. So to make sure that our workforce is trained to have those engagements is very important. In my mind, the key to truly seeing a long-term reduction in gun violence lies with our youth. So we try every possible avenue to create positive experience, opportunities, and interaction for kids in our community. We do this through programming with our parks and recreation teams. We are continuously problem solving and saying, what is the gap? What can we do? How can we do it? And how can we show up? We do this by hiring kids across departments for part-time jobs that can lead to a long-term careers with the city. And I personally do this by meeting with incredibly young people who are part of our Youth Managers Advisory Group. And lastly, evidence-based policing innovations are at the core of what we do and how we make public safety decisions. We are committed to problem solving as we address localized crimes in our neighborhoods. What we do know is that it is important to set an example of what our young people can be and what they can do with their life. And there are good jobs in public service. City Hall is not just working with the elected officials to pass policy. We have had more kids in City Hall to give them access to our community pathways than ever before, because we understand that there are good jobs with good resources in addition to health insurance many people don't have. We have to start looking at things differently, looking at the whole person, and that's what we're committed to. Looking at impact for thriving neighborhoods, we've invested more than $3 million in community-led violence prevention and reduction programs. Our Safe and Clean Neighborhood Fund supports and encourages community-based and community-initiated efforts to improve neighborhood safety and eliminate blight. For instance, you all are here and you're part of Downtown Council. The great thing is we have resources that we can give to you all, so you all can then activate and do what you see best. You see what is happening in front of your front door every day, all day. We do not. But what we say is, let's give the resources to the people who are experiencing these situations. Let's find a way to make it easy for you all to act on our behalf. That is why we have Act for Cincy, because it's not about just City Hall. It's about you all being armed with the ability to act yourselves. This year, we provided funding for more than a dozen organizations for a variety of projects like identifying and addressing litter and dumping hotspots in Abigail, Wadden Hills, and Evanston. Price Hill Safety, CAT, receives funds to beautify vacant lots and properties with the help of community members and kids in their neighborhood. What better way than to get kids activated to see them be able to do something and change an area in their neighborhood? That's investment. Westwood Works receive funds to remove dead trees that pose a safety risk, particularly to students as they're located near Gamble Montessori. Through our Boots on the Ground Fund, we provided financial support to Whitney Strong, Wesley Chapel Mission Center, Whitney Hills Community Council, Avondale Community Council, Cincinnati Math Lab, Northside Farmers Market, and Madisonville Education and Assistance Center, to name a few. That was more than a few. These grants, all $25,000 or less, go to organizations out in the community doing the work, engaging communities to address the root cause of gun violence. That might be through youth programming, access to affordable health food, or access to affordable housing. But what we want to hear from our community, that is all of you, is how can we help? Because it is our residents, it is all of you that live here in the city of Cincinnati, that are fellow Cincinnatians who know best what is going on in their neighborhood. We need those voices to make a difference where it matters. We need all of you. That's why venues like this are important for us to show up. As a part of Thriving Neighborhoods, we also focus on how we can help eliminate blight and beautify our neighborhoods. So far this year, we focused our cleanup efforts in North OTR and the West End, with more than 13 pounds of trash collected to date. 13,000 pounds, sorry. I missed the comment, my apologies. Y'all, that's little. That's a lot. Thriving Neighborhoods also focus on economic development, and we're seeing huge investments in our urban core to revitalize existing buildings and remove blight. The urban core is the center of the city's economic production. We know that. Transportation and infrastructure is critically important to see our downtown succeed, and we've been part of a historic investment in our central business district. Just this year, how many of y'all came to Macy's headquarters ground ribbon cutting? Okay, well, it looks like we got to call Nuke to get some tours going. What about the new Mercantile Apartments? How many of you been there? Open for residents who want to be part of downtown. And of course, the $828 million transformational investment in the Convention Center District. These are real dollars. We continue to reinforce how important it is to lock up your guns, both at home and if you make the decision to leave your house with one. Now, this is the interesting thing. If you bring your gun in your car, and then you can't take it to where you're going, why are you bringing your gun with you? That is my question. So what we are continuously doing is trying to communicate. Please leave it at home.
Why do the cops have now?
We provide free gun locks at all CPD district headquarters and through the libraries. CPD also introduced a program to allow firearm owners to temporarily store their firearms securely at CPD for up to 6 months. Kids are getting access to guns too easily. One new intervention we are piloting this summer, and I don't know how you're going to feel about this, is restricting the use of red bikes and rental e-scooters on weekends. But let me tell you, this idea was something that has been done before with scooters, and I have heard directly from you who have said this is an issue. Through problem solving, working with police, collaboration, we're like, let's pilot it and try it. As we were responding to increased crime in our urban core, police told me they observed kids using these easy-to-access modes of transportation to commit property crime. We have seen a reduction in our theft from autos since implementing this measure. Too many guns are stolen from vehicles, and we will make every effort to reduce the likelihood of this happening. The city invested $600,000 in October 2024 to build out the Hope and Shield network as a first response to gun victims who are treated at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and UC Health. In that time, they have expanded staff for this program and enrolled 91 patients. Only one of those patients have been re-injured. We hope that providing victims of gun violence immediate assistance, not just medically, but with a wraparound service for jobs, housing, and mentorship, we can reduce the chance they are victimized again. We have to take care of those who need to be taken care of. We have to give them opportunity. And if the city, the government, is the one to give them hope, we are happy to do that. So let's talk about some of the ways we engage with our youth and provide safe opportunities for them to enrich themselves, be exposed to new paths, and build positive relationships with friends and mentors. We know Recognize has expanded upon its success last year by adding a second location and more programming every Saturday this summer for our young people. Let's take a look at some of the numbers. More than 1,500 kids have attended, representing over 50 neighborhoods in greater Cincinnati and Kentucky. More than 35 high schools represented. Our most recent data from July 12th showed 13% of the kids were new to Recognize. And as we have increased attendance each weekend compared to last year, we have teams of professionals out in the community connecting with our kids and providing resources. This includes our 311 community responders and community care outreach workers led by our Iris Rowley. And career pathways, and we mentioned this earlier. We know the difference in job and income can make in the life of a child. We want kids to be introduced to career pathways. They may have never imagined themselves and support their career growth and development to build a pipeline of potential talent for city employment. Looking at our evidence-based policing solution, we have 18 active community problem-oriented policing projects in areas across the city, including Cuff, Coreyville, OTR, downtown, Northside, and more. And I'll speak to this more on the next slide, but I've directed staff to explore how we would enforce the current curfew for unaccompanied minors. For several weeks, multiple city departments have been working together to determine how we can successfully and safely enforce a curfew for unaccompanied minors in the city. CPD is reviewing its policies and procedures to determine what adjustments may need to be made with the current existing policy. We have a cross-departmental team discussing enforcement options, including updated ordinances, reaching out to partners for potential collaboration, and researching a potential centralized curfew center. We can provide programming all day long, but when we provide programming and when we get to 12, 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, these kids need to be home. How can we do that? How many remember the saying, nothing good happens after 11 o'clock? How many remember that? So our job is to get them to a trusted professional, provide those wraparound services, see what we can to make sure that these youth are in safe situations. And that's what we are committed to doing. All this is being done under the legal guidance of the city solicitor. We continue to discuss this internally to make sure we are thorough and thoughtful in our recommendations to council, which will come next month. I'm incredibly proud of the work of my team. We know we have work to do, not just city staff. All of us have a role to play to reduce violence in our city. When you all are sending emails or suggestions, thank you for that. When you all are seeing somebody and saying something and participating in the community and showing up like this, thank you for that. Because at the end of the day, none of us have said we know all the answers. But when we have community supporting us in these efforts because we all invested, that's where the successes are.
Hey everyone, Vanessa Rufus here in the Live Impact News Studio. We are pivoting away from this earlier public forum on public safety in Cincinnati to bring you this breaking news. There has been a tsunami watch issued for the state of Hawaii. We're actually looking at the earthquake that is related to this tsunami watch. What we're seeing here from National Weather Service, about a half hour ago, this magnitude 8 earthquake struck just off the east coast of an area called Kamchatka. It's in Russia, but obviously all in that same area, Ring of Fire area. Issues posed for the state of Hawaii. So looks like the tsunami watch is about 20 minutes old at this point. Could be destructive, we're seeing on coastal areas. An investigation underway to determine how long this threat will last. Looks like if tsunami waves impact Hawaii, the National Weather Service estimates the estimated earliest arrival for the first tsunami wave would be 7:17 p.m. This would be Hawaii Standard Time. So keep in mind, right now it is almost 2 o'clock there. So the first wave might not come until 5 hours from now. So we'll definitely keep an eye on the situation there. So once again, if you're just joining us here on Live Impact News, Tsunami Watch issued for the state of Hawaii following an earthquake that was centered in the area of Russia, east coast of Russia, and posing a potential tsunami issue. The estimate is if there is going to be a sort of wave of sort, it would come about 5 hours from now. All right, folks, we want to pivot now to the State Department briefing today. Of course, a lot of eyeballs on international relations and also what international participation will be in the sense of what's going to be done about Gaza. And we heard the president kind of addressing some of that just a few moments ago when we shared his Q&A with reporters upon returning from Scotland. That said, we want to turn now to the State Department and spokesperson Tammy Bruce. Let's listen in.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Great to see all of you. We do have some announcements as we proceed with our briefing, and then, of course, happy to take some questions. This week, the UN is serving as host to an unproductive and ill-timed conference on the so-called two-state solution in New York City. This is a publicity stunt that comes in the middle of delicate diplomatic efforts to end the conflict in Gaza. Far from promoting peace, the conference will prolong the war, will embolden Hamas, and reward its obstruction and undermine real-world efforts to achieve real peace. As Secretary Rubio has made clear, this effort is a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th and a reward for terrorism. It keeps hostages trapped in tunnels. The United States will not participate in this insult, but will continue to lead real-world efforts to end the fighting and deliver a permanent peace. Our focus remains on serious diplomacy, not stage-managed conferences designed to manufacture the appearance of relevance. Also, the United States welcomes the ceasefire declaration announced yesterday between Cambodia and Thailand. We commend both governments for taking this important step to ease tensions along the border. President Trump and Secretary Rubio spoke with their Cambodian and Thai counterparts on July 26th to underscore the need for an immediate cessation of the violence. Building on those conversations, the United States, working in close coordination with the government of Malaysia, co-organized the ceasefire talks in Kuala Lumpur on July 28th. These talks provided a vital platform for both parties to come together in good faith and ultimately reach agreement on a ceasefire. We are also grateful to Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim for his leadership and for hosting the ceasefire talks. President Trump and Secretary Rubio remain firmly committed to an immediate cessation of violence and expect the governments of Cambodia and Thailand to honor their commitments to end this conflict. Further, in the aftermath of the recent typhoon and tropical storm that have devastated the Philippines, the United States remains committed to supporting the Philippine government in assessing the needs and providing critical assistance. The State Department is deploying a U.S.-based team to strengthen the local relief efforts, including supporting food distribution efforts for displaced families and coordinating logistics for relief efforts led by the government of the Philippines. To date, we have helped transport tens of thousands of food packs to the hardest-hit communities, ensuring vital resources reach those in need. This collaboration underscores the enduring partnership and strong ties between the United States and the Philippines. Finally, in today's topper, yesterday, President Trump announced a trade deal with the European Union, fundamentally rebalancing the economic relationship between the world's two largest economies. This deal marks a generational modernization of the transatlantic alliance and will provide Americans with unprecedented levels of market access to the European Union. The deal bolsters America's economy and manufacturing capabilities. The EU will purchase $750 billion, with a B, my favorite, of U.S. energy and make new investments of $600 billion in the United States, all by 2028. Through decisive leadership and an unyielding commitment to American workers, President Trump has delivered yet another agreement that positions the United States as the world's preeminent destination for investment, innovation, and advanced manufacturing. Since day one, President Trump challenged the assumption that American workers and businesses must tolerate unfair trade practices that have disadvantaged them for decades and contributed to our historic trade deficit. Yesterday's announcement opens up historic market access to the second largest economy in the world, reestablishing the strong, positive, long-term relationship between the United States and its key ally, the European Union. And before we begin, and I'll take your questions, we've switched a little bit here in the front row. I'm looking at some new faces, while all the faces that you guys recognize at home, watching the briefings for these last 6 months, recognize, I have to say that the bullpen members and the individuals that you see on camera have their own fan bases, if you will. So people are excited, of course, each day to see the exchanges, and I appreciate that. But what people may not know are the number of people who come to this room for each briefing, who are journalists with outlets that speak to people around the world. And we think it's time, as I'm used to seeing, well, you far back there, nice to see you, Nadia as well, but I'll be introducing you to the front row today. It'll change for each briefing, but this is an opportunity for us to get to know you, for further experience and advancement, for the nature of what Americans in the world see as we answer these questions. Saeed, of course, has his own fan club, but nice to see you over here. It's a little confusing as opposed to over there. So just as a reminder, for those of you watching at home, whether it be, of course, or our State Department account on X, etc., wherever you may be viewing us. First, over here is Saeed. Saeed is with Al-Quds, a bullpen member, as a matter of fact, and Tim with the Washington Examiner here. Welcome aboard, Tim. We also have Yelena, yes, from NTN from Columbia. Vaughn is here with Washington Times, and Danielle, as we noted, and Nadia, who you've also gotten to know here at our briefing. So welcome to the front row. Again, it will change for each briefing. I don't know what Tommy has in mind for Thursday. He'll be briefing on Thursday as usual. But let us begin with your questions. I'll start with the front row. Yes, sir. Vaughn.
President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have issued seemingly contradictory statements on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Is there a rift emerging between the two leaders, and how is this impacting peace efforts, if at all?
Well, of course, what I won't comment on is the nature of a relationship. What we've seen between the President and the Prime Minister has been a very good relationship. Certainly, this is a fluid, dynamic situation. That's an understatement when it comes to what's happening in Gaza, especially with the new efforts regarding the humanitarian assistance. Certainly, the President's point of view regarding what we need to do and continue to do, which we have been doing, which is facilitating the food assistance through GHF, but also, of course, the financial investment and the President's work and this government's work and Secretary Rubio's work to stop the carnage, to have a ceasefire, to get the hostages released, and to have the killing stopped. I think that when we look at the nature of remarks by the President, there's one thing that's clear that everyone can agree on, is that it is his humanitarian nature to focus on diplomatic solutions. But he is a realist and he'll go and do what he needs to realize what his goals are, which is peace and a ceasefire. And also, I think, the recognition that no one has denied, we have not denied it in this room, that the humanitarian assistance to this point has not been enough. My argument has been is that it would never be enough in that obscene, unnatural environment. And so we're proceeding in that regard, and of course, with President Trump's leadership, as he noted yesterday, to do even more to assist when it comes to food and other aid. So that's, I think, without getting ahead of the president, as we'll learn more about what his plans are coming up. We know the secretary, of course, has led the way in this regard as well, but the focus remains certainly the humanitarian aid, and our focus remains also on a ceasefire and ending that carnage. All right. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. I like this disposition. It's really nice.
Don't get used to it. Okay.
All right. I have two questions, if you don't mind. The first one is about the United Nations conference that is taking place in New York. You just read the statement. We heard the president. We all agree that Hamas attacked Israel October 7th. But there were like 193 nations attending. So my question, led by the French and the Saudis, that struck a deal also with the United States in a couple of months ago. So we understand there's going to be, hopefully, the president is only 6 months in his mandate with the secretary, and they're fighting for a peace deal. But
sir?
The question is how the State Department envision the future for the Palestinian and the Palestinian state.
Yes.
Is it going to be a Palestinian state, or they're pushing for
Well,
one state
first of all,
solution?
the president has noted, as has Secretary Rubio, that at least they are envisioning a future, which is not something that most people can say. All of their work has led to getting to a point where we can discuss and envision that future and then act on that. Regardless of the conflict that has been worked on, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, the Gaza Strip, or anywhere else, you can't really begin to contemplate what's next until people stop killing each other. We are still at that point. We have not, because of Hamas's recalcitrance and refusal to lay down its arms, refusal to release the hostages, we're not at a point where we're looking at, what is next. We know things will have to be rebuilt. The president has made remarks in that regard, but from the beginning, calling for new ideas and a new way forward, so that it's not just a repeat of what we've experienced for generations now.
And if I can do a follow-up about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Yesterday, the president also talked with the UK Prime Minister, and the UK will help in the Humanitarian Foundation, in the aid. So what are we going to see next? Is the president at the State Department see that this organization somehow maybe is not working out for different reasons?
Well, what I said from the start is that this is not about what has not worked. Clearly, we're now, I think, close to 100 million meals have been distributed by.
Right now, folks, we've got some activity in that bottom right box. We want to take that live at this point here on Live Impact News. Live images from New York City as we have this multi-faith prayer vigil underway to honor those lost in the shooting last night in Midtown Manhattan. Let's listen in.
We pray for strength in this time. For the communities that have been affected, we pray. For the profound grief that we all feel, we pray. For those who have lost a brother, a sister, a friend, a co-worker, we pray. For NYPD, who have lost a colleague, and for many, a trusted friend, we pray. Lord, in the face of violence and confusion, Lord, we claim your love this evening. May we love those who are afar off, and may we love those who are near. This evening, Lord, I ask you to heal the hearts of all those who have been affected, and heal the hearts of our great city. In the name of our Lord Jesus, amen and amen.
Thank you, Pastor. And I want to thank the governor of the state of New York. She has been a consistent partner and looking after the safety of New Yorkers on every time we reached out to her to talk about these issues that impact her. She responded with a very clear focus and mission that this city and the residents of this city are crucial to the stability of our entire state. And her joining us here today is a clear indicator of how she mourns with the city and the lives of those innocent civilians and our beloved police officer. This is an extremely, extremely challenging moment for me emotionally. As I sat with Officer Islam's dad and learning that he was his only son, it was difficult for me to walk to that podium last night and do my role as a mayor, because although I'm the mayor, I'm still a man. And I thought about my baby, my young son that I watched and I raised, and how much I poured into him, and how much I gave my life for him. And to lose a child, it is one of the most abnormal things that could happen in our society. Children are supposed to bury their parents. Parents are not supposed to bury their children. And this senseless act of violence, as the police commissioner and I walked through the building and saw the blood trails and the videos of the level of violence that I have not witnessed at that level before. And the intersectionality of this journey that I have in the building and the offices. I worked as a mailroom and stockroom attendant in 345 Park Avenue as a young man. And to have to walk through and see the remnants of violence of that level tore at me. And then I reflected on 2001 after the terrorist attack in this city. And a group of Muslim officers came to me because they were being victimized because of the attack and because of their faith and belief. I joined them, and we moved forward to start an organization that recruited Muslim officers to be part of the New York City Police Department. And their ranks and numbers have grown throughout the years. And they bring with them a level of faith, a level of family, a level of commitment, and level of dedication that we all should be proud of, because it is a signature of who we are as a city. This is New York. New York is not a person who drives across the coast and come here and commit this act of violence. We are New York, of different faiths and beliefs and different houses of worship. We need our faith community at this moment to do something that is more powerful than any legislative agenda, and that is prayer. It is time to pray. It is time to lean into our faith and understand the significance of the power of prayer and what it represents. Officer Islam is a symbol of the greatness of this city. Our ranks have increased in all the different ethnic and community groups, from South and Central America to Asia to across the Middle East. You're seeing officers that are now ambassadors for their community, and they are welcoming faces that states the New York City Police Department is representative of the full diversity of our entire city. But more importantly, that should not be lost on us. We have advocated for smart, sensible gun reform. You cannot create an environment with a person who does not have the mental capacity and the tool and the bullets to walk into any building in America and create havoc of this nation, of this proportion. We cannot respond to senseless gun laws through vigils. It must be responded through legislation. It is time to turn the corner of a society where automatic weapons are as easy to get as a cell phone. We need to rethink who we are as a society, that there is a level of comfortability to carry an illegal weapon of this magnitude. Yes, we can say we're the safest big city in America. Yes, we could talk about what we have done, the governor and the police commissioner and I. Yes, we have broken records of the lowest number of shootings and homicides in the recorded history of the city. Yes, we can talk about the 23 almost 1,000 guns we removed off the streets, but that is not a consolation for the families who lost their loved ones inside 345 Park Avenue. And not only those who have lost loved ones, but the physical and mental trauma that will face those employees every day. And we want to thank our corporate security entities. When we put together a team of security consultants from all of our corporate leaders that sat down with us each month to create ways of how do we ensure you are safe when you go to your place of employment, to ensure that we hold active shooter drills. I want to thank Rudin Management for what they did, for making sure they had safe rooms and safe spaces for their employees to be able to lock in place. I want to thank them for ensuring that we had active shooters drills to make sure that employees know what to do. That is a responsible behavior for employers. I want to thank those who participate in those drills, and I believe it saved lives. I want to thank the men and women of the police department who were conscious that they were running into a building with active shooter was on the ground, not knowing who else was in the building or any form of incendiary device that was waiting to trap them. I want to thank them for their response, for running towards danger when we all want to run away from that. That's what the men and women of the police department do every day, and our law enforcement communities, what they do every day. And I want to ask those who want to demonize their activity to have a personal reflection of understanding the role that we believe public safety play in our city. But yes, if you add up the drills, if you add up the responses, if you add up the safe rooms, you add them all up, you come to the sum that it's an indictment on our society when we have to practice what to do when a shooter enter our buildings or our schools. That's not the city or country we want to live in. There's no consolation prize that we can award ourselves because we're preparing people when they hear a gunshot how to respond. That is not who we want to be as a society. And I don't want to go to a vigil where your loved ones, your child, your spouse is lost due to senseless violence. That's not the city I want to live in, and it's darn sure not the country I want to live in. We can do better. And there has been too many mass shootings in our society. The overproliferation of guns and weapons and the easy access to them must come to a stop. And the numbers are disheartening. Bullets are carving highways of death through our community. And even when the actual bullet hits the body of a human being, the trajectory of pain rips apart the anatomy of our society. We deserve better. And I'm going to commit my life, just as I did when I wore that bulletproof vest and stood on street corners and protected the children and families of this city. I would do it as the mayor of this city. And I personally feel responsible for what happened to each one of the victims of this shooting. It's my job to keep you safe. That's what I swore to do when I took the oath of office. And I'm committed to doing it. And I'm going to give my life to doing it. It breaks my heart when I see what happened to these innocent New Yorkers. It tore me apart. It took something away from me. But it recommitted me to what we must do to keep New Yorkers safe. And I want to thank the men and women who are here from our faith-based institutions. Because I don't care what anyone say, it's time to pray. It's time to pray. There's some things that are beyond who we are, and it allows in our ability to put our combined energy and spirits together as we start the process of healing that is needed. We will wrap our arms around Officer Islam. We'll wrap our arms around our 4 other victims. We'll be here because that's what we do as New Yorkers. No one show a greater level of compassion when it's time to show our display of need for others. We know how to do that because we do it best. We've been here before. We've gone through difficult times as New Yorkers, but we've shown the country our resiliency and our ability to stand tall. This is what this city represents. And I want to thank you for coming out tonight and showing your support for the victims at 345 Park Avenue. They will always be remembered. And we will always stand up in the face of hate in the city. I want to turn it over to the governor of the state of New York and thank her for being with us tonight. Governor Hochul.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that very much. Thank you. Mayor Adams, on behalf of everyone in this city and the great state of New York, I want to thank you for the leadership that you showed in this trying moment to show what compassion is, what having a heart is all about, but also be able to be calm in the face of the storm. When I witnessed you going on television, I saw how challenging it was for you, but you stood there and persevered to describe the horrific actions that had taken place. This unfolded a few hours earlier. So I want to thank you again, Mayor Adams, for everything you have done for this city and continue to do, particularly keeping all of us safe. Commissioner Jessica Tisch, one of the most humble people you'll ever meet, but she deserves our gratitude for the courage she has displayed in this moment of standing up to the hatred and the violence and supporting the men and women of the NYPD. Thank you, Commissioner Tisch, for all you do for us. And to all of you who've come out here tonight, it's a hot evening. It's an emotional evening. They say that grief is the price you pay for love. What does that mean? It means there were 4 individuals who just a little more than 24 hours ago walked this earth. They were so well loved by their parents, a husband, a wife, their children, their coworkers, that the pain is so searing right now. It seems unending. As I called a young husband who told me with such great pride about his wife and her career and how she was raising their 12-year-old and 14-year-old, I didn't know what to say. I said, I've been married to a man I cherish. I'm a wife, a mom. I don't know what to say to you to lift this pain off your heart. But I want you to know that we love you. As a city and as a state, we love you. And we are also traumatized by what you've had to go through, all of them. So I spoke to the young widow, an expectant mother of 2, expecting her 3rd child. I spoke to her today. And I just tried to convey, again, that sense of compassion that all of us as human beings feel. I said, is there anything we can do for you? And in her broken English, she just said, pray for us. So I am so proud that the mayor and others have gathered here tonight to allow us to have that moment of prayer, to lift up these families who are asking for our prayers. And we will do that tonight. And going forward, I promised her that. We will keep that promise this evening. And you're hearing a lot about hearts. Hearts connotes love. Today I could not stop but think about that iconic logo that defines all of us. The I love New York. That big red heart in the middle of it. You see it everywhere. Tonight, my friends, that heart is broken because there's collective pain shared by all of us. There's one thing I know, though, that heart will mend. It'll heal because we are resilient. We are strong. We have been tested over and over and over again. And we always come together in tragedy to lift each other up. That's what makes us so special here in New York. And I'll also echo the mayor's remarks. But yes, we'll offer condolences and love and compassion, prayers above all. But if this nation misses yet another moment to do what is right that they've neglected to do for decades, then shame on them. This is the time to stand up and say no more slaughter by a weapon of mass destruction designed to kill people on the battlefield, not in our buildings here in the great city of New York. That era must end. There's been too many vigils, too many lives lost, whether it's a school, a concert, or at a grocery store in the city of Buffalo, my hometown, where just 3 years ago we lost 10 of my neighbors, randomly selected. It has to end, my friends, and I know how it can start. Congress must have the courage to say, we are a great nation. Our citizens deserve better. We respect all rights, but no one should claim as a constitutional right the ability to bear an arm. But I assure you, our founding fathers did not contemplate when our Constitution was written. So that must end now. So I say, we take our voices, we march, we continue in the lives of others we've lost. We must speak out in their names so this moment is not lost. And I'm proud to team up with the mayor and others who want to join in that fight once again. It's not a new fight. But for once and for all, let's put this to bed and say our nation deserves safety and security, and to know when they say goodbye to their loved ones, when they go off to work in the morning, whether they're a police officer or office worker, they're going to see their family again at the end of the day. That did not happen yesterday, but it must happen going forward. Otherwise, who are we as a people if we can't stand up for each other? May God bless the NYPD. May God bless the families whose lives have been shredded and torn apart. May God bless the people of this great city and the state of New York. And above all, God bless the United States of America and heaven help her in our time of need. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. To the families of those we've lost, to the loved ones of Officer Didarul Islam, to his fellow officers, and to every New Yorker gathered here in grief. Tonight, we come together in sorrow and remembrance to honor 4 lives taken far too soon. And for those of us in the NYPD, we carry a particular weight as we mourn one of our own. Officer Didarul Islam was a New York City police officer who represented the very best of what our city has to offer. He served this city with quiet strength and unwavering purpose. He didn't ask for attention. He didn't ask for praise. He simply showed up, tour after tour, and did the work that holds this city together. In the Jewish tradition, when someone passes, we say, Zichronam Levracha, may their memory be a blessing. It's not a comfort, it's a call to make sure that what was good in someone's life doesn't end with their death. Because a memory doesn't become a blessing on its own. It becomes one when we carry forward what was best in them. Their courage, their kindness, their sense of duty, their love for others. And even now, in these first painful hours, we see that beginning. The people who knew them best are already carrying that blessing in the stories they share, in the silence they keep, in the depth of the loss that they hold together. That kind of love doesn't disappear. That kind of service doesn't end. Eland, Julia, my beautiful friend Wesley, and police officer Didarul Islam. They were taken from our arms in violence. They now rest in God's arms in peace. May their memories be a blessing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those reflections from our leaders. And now we'll turn it over to our faith leaders to have moments of prayer, beginning with Imam Bacchus.
On behalf of myself and the Muslim community, we extend our deepest condolences to the bereaved family members. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين ولنبلونكم الله بشيء من الخوف وجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأثقال فهم مقمحون صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is not a great day, but it's very sorry what happened in 345. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here on behalf of the Sikh community and also offer myself as a heartfelt condolence to the bereaved family and the friends of all the innocent victims of the tragic incidents. May the Almighty Majesty grant eternal peace to their soul and immense the fortitude of their families and the friends to bear this unbearable loss. Now I'm going to start a prayer. If everybody can join and stand up, I'm going to Ardas from the Sikh Ardas. Vaheguru Satnam Jiyo. तीनों ताप निवारण हारा दुख हंता सुखराग ताको बेना कोई लागे जन की बब्बे अरदास अरदास एक ओंकार वाहिगुरू जी ते वार श्री भगवती जी पातशाही 10वें प्रथम भगवती समय के गुरु नानक लेते आए फिर अंगद गुरु तिमराव रामदास जाए अर्जन हर को बिंद नो सिमरो सिरिया राय श्री हर कृष्ण ते आइए जी डिठे शब्द जाए तेग बहादुर सिमरिए करना निजावे ताए सब थाई होए साहे 10वें पातशाह तन तन श्री गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी महाराज कलियाण पातशाह दो जहां दे वाली सब थां दसां पातशाह दी आत्मा जोत तन तन श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब दे पाठ दर्शन दीदार दा खालसा बोलो वाहिगुरू हे निमाणियां दे मान निताणियां दे तान नियोटियां दे सच्चे पिता तन तन श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी आपदे चरणां को अरदास है आपने दाता जो भी दाता कल ये पाना वरत्या है जो जिन्हें जो भी
ਵਿਕਟਮ ਬਣੇ ਹਨ। ਦਾਤਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੰਦਰੁਸਤੀ ਬਖਸ਼ੀ, ਮਿਹਰ ਕਰੀ, ਆਪਣੇ ਚਰਨਾਂ ਨਿਵਾਸ ਦੇ। ਜੋ ਆਇਆ ਸੋ ਚਲਸੀ, ਸਭ ਕੋ ਆਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ के जी प्राण है। उसने एक कुदरत का हुक्म है। दिस इज द अटल जो the any man come in the world has to go, but unfortunately these people they were not supposed to go, but God wished them so। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are Buddhist. We from the American Buddhist Confederation. We chanting Heart Sutra and make prayer. Namo 本师释迦牟尼佛，南无本师释迦牟尼佛，南无本师释迦牟尼佛，般若波罗蜜多心经。观自在菩萨，心生般若波罗蜜多，照见五蕴皆都一切故三粒子，色不异空，空不异，色即是空，空即是色，受想行识亦般如，舍利子是诸法空，言不生不灭不恶不不增不减是故空中无。无受想行识无言而必色身，无色声言为诸法，无眼见乃至无意识，无明也无明也乃至无老死也无老死，无故勤密道无智亦无，亦无受得果菩提萨埵依般若波罗蜜多，心无挂碍无挂碍，无有空不远离定的梦想，涅槃三世诸法依般若波罗蜜多故，了多罗三藐三菩提故知般若波罗蜜，四大神者四大明者四无上者四无等等，能作一切果真实不虚故知般若波罗蜜多。所有解体解体波罗解体波罗僧解体菩提萨婆愿生希望净土中，求平宁我为父母，阿甘听我。
All right, we're going to pivot away from this live feed in New York City. As you can see, this multi-faith prayer vigil underway, honoring those killed, the 5 dead, including the gunman, in this shooting situation from yesterday, Midtown Manhattan. We're turning back to this breaking news, the tsunami alerts that are out there. We've got a few new details to share, and this one sounds like a real big whopper because we're actually seeing the magnitude of this earthquake reported off the coast of Russia being bumped up. So earlier we were seeing magnitude 8. You can see now magnitude 8.7. As we mentioned, this is in the area of Russia, but is having impacts we can see globally. We've got alerts out for Alaska now. We also have alerts, as we mentioned before, for Hawaii. And there is the potential, we were sharing before, that within, I guess it's now going to be a 4-hour range, if there are any tsunami waves that are heading towards Hawaii, that's probably the time frame that it might take for the waves to get there. We're trying to get some more information from experts on the ground, but we can tell you our chief meteorologist, Brad Panovich, has been sharing a wealth of information for us, including the fact that apparently this earthquake was actually detected here in the Carolinas. And this is really incredible to see. He actually shared a seismograph that's from our area, and you can actually see the lines, and I know, Jeb, you're working on this right now, where it bumped. So this is actually from Brad, and he posted this on social media. Brad's coming in, by the way. He's heading over to the Live Impact News studio as we speak. But he basically says that we don't feel them. So us sitting here in the Carolinas, we're not going to feel the ground shake, but the P waves, as he describes them, are the fastest to arrive and travel through the Earth's crust. And so we can actually see them picked up by seismographs. Really, really interesting stuff here. What we're also seeing here, this watch issued for Hawaii, possible to change. And the way that I've kind of educated myself on this is just by reading up on some materials and reporting that I'm seeing around. It's kind of similar to the way that Brad has explained watches and warnings to us. Here in the Carolinas, when we talk about, let's say, hurricanes or tornadoes, where watches, you have all of the ingredients in place, potential for this weather event. In this case, the event would be a tsunami. A warning would kind of be the step up from that, where they go, this is going to happen, you need to be on the lookout for sure. For Alaska, we're actually seeing the warning level. And we have from essentially NOAA, National Weather Service, this U.S. tsunami warning system. And that's the correct graphic, Jeb, that Brad has also shared with us. But you can kind of see a look at the different levels. So you've got warnings, which are in red. You've got advisories, which are in orange, and then yellow is the watch. So we mentioned how yellow is kind of like the ingredients are there. We need to see more to potentially upgrade this to a real threat. But the warnings we're seeing for Attu, Alaska, Samalga Pass, Alaska. There's an advisory for Samalga Pass, Chignik Bay in Alaska. There's a watch for Chignik Bay. Also, it looks like the California-Mexico border, that whole stretch of yellow, that's as far down as that extends. So from Alaska down to the California-Mexico border. You can also see some threats pointed out for other nations, as we mentioned. This is a global issue. Japan, Philippines, Russia, Midway Island, Marshall Islands we're seeing as well included here, Guam. So this whole kind of, I've heard it described before as Pacific Ring of Fire seems to be under alert at this hour. Now, Brad has shared some other interesting information with us as well. The fact that this has been upgraded to an 8.7, certainly catching a lot of eyeballs, as Brad is reporting that this would actually be in the top 10 largest magnitudes ever recorded, which is really kind of scary to think. And he outlined some of the other quakes to know about, with number one being a 9.5. So keep in mind, 8.7 is what we saw tonight. 9.5, which happened in Chile back in 1960. And then basically, rounding out the top 10 behind this one tonight would be an 8.6 in India back in 1950 and the 8.6 2012 earthquake in Sumatra, Indonesia. So folks really on high alert at this point. We're trying, of course, as we mentioned, get some more information from any of the authorities on the ground to see how things are going to be handled going forward. We're waiting Brad to get over here too, to give us more kind of in-depth context to some of the preliminary information he's provided to us. But, in general, what we can tell you here, folks, breaking tonight, we've got this massive, in some ways historic earthquake that has struck off the coast of Russia and is putting this whole area around the Pacific on alert, including Hawaii and Alaska. Alaska being on an actual tsunami warning, and Hawaii at this point under a watch, a standby, wait and see. And so a few more details here, and you'll know this because if you were watching in the 7 o'clock hour, this is kind of around the time that we broke in with the first news of this earthquake. It was recorded just before 7:30 tonight. We talked about how it was off the southeast coast of Russia. It's about 84 miles east-southeast of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, Russia. And USGS saying that this is actually a relatively shallow earthquake. It struck at a depth of about 12 miles. Speaking of timing and such, we kind of alluded to the fact that it could take a little bit, matter of hours. I think we're down to about 4 or 5 hours for a potential tsunami to reach Hawaii, if that is going to be a concern. But for Japan, for example, apparently their weather agency there tonight said it was expecting a tsunami to hit Japan about 3¼ feet, reaching large coastal areas probably in about 15 minutes or so is the estimated time of arrival for Japan. And 3 hours is the estimate for a potential hazardous tsunami wave for Japan plus Russia. So we also kind of broke down this as well, the fact that there are kind of different levels of alerts to know with tsunamis. National Weather Service talks about how they have these tsunami warning centers. They alert the local authorities, and then they have 4 levels that they talk about. The warning, which we talked about, is pretty severe. That's the one that part of Alaska is under. Potential impacts there could be widespread flooding, dangerous coastal flooding. They could see some pretty strong currents, and this could last for hours, even days, after the tsunami hits. Then they have the advisory we mentioned on that map, which we've now moved to the bottom right corner of the screen. It's the orange color there on the map. Basically says to take action with the potential of strong currents and waves to come in. There could be some flooding of the beach and harbor areas. And then there's the watch, which we said is the yellow. So this is stretching from other parts of Alaska down to the California-Mexico border, parts of Hawaii, as we talked about. The watch says, be prepared. A distant earthquake has occurred. A tsunami is possible. And then hopefully what many folks will end up getting tonight is kind of an information statement that says, relax. Essentially, this is what the National Weather Service, they describe it as, relax, an earthquake has occurred, but there's no threat to you. So those are the 4 different levels that we see according to National Weather Service with a tsunami. We talked about, folks, the fact that we're trying to get some more coverage from our crews closer to that area on the ground, so bear with us. I think we're working on that. We're getting close. I'm seeing a feed coming up, Jeb. Okay, just a heads up, folks, this is going to be Portland, right? So they'll be kind of in that stretch that we mentioned. I believe it'll be the yellow stretch on the map that we were looking at before. Let's take you now to KGW in Portland, Oregon.
Remind if you're at the coast that if this tsunami watch gets upgraded to a warning or even an advisory, then you may need to evacuate and get to higher ground. And that's what those evacuation 9.1 in 2011, I was just told. So that was even bigger than the one that we got today. But still, it doesn't mean that this 8.0 is something to be ignored. That is a major earthquake, and it happened offshore, which is why we have tsunami watches and warnings, because when an earthquake happens offshore, it displaces a lot of water. Now, it depends on what type of earthquake it was, whether or not you do displace enough water to create a large wave. But obviously, we've already got watches and advisories, so geologists are concerned that it is the kind of earthquake that can, amplify when it reaches the west coast here and cause damage. So back to my point about the tsunami evacuation areas on the Oregon coast, Christine, those are not to be, ignored. They're there for a very, very good reason. And if you notice, the low levels are the evacuation areas. The higher levels, as you drive on Highway 101, of course, get you out of the tsunami warning area because you're too high in elevation to be impacted by any incoming wave. So if you're at the coast, if you live at the coast, you're visiting the coast, you can hear us now. Just keep that in mind that if the sirens go off, you're going to need to move. That is a potential for this evening.
And just one more quick question before we go to a live camera. Did you say that Honolulu or Hawaii was we're under a tsunami watch, but they are under a tsunami advisory, you had said?
About 20 minutes ago, they were under a watch, and I can tell by the color now that they are now under an advisory for the Hawaiian Islands here. So that means that they are quite confident that at least a minor tsunami will reach the Hawaiian Islands. Now, that may not be enough to cause any damage. Hopefully not. This is the live shot from our affiliate in Honolulu, KHNL. You're looking at Honolulu Live. Beautiful day in Hawaii, as it typically is. But I'm sure they're on high alert in Hawaii, and they're used to this because they've had these happen before, 2011 and since. So I'm sure the folks who live, especially on the north shore of those islands, because this earthquake being to the northwest of the islands, the wave will come from that direction. So the north and northwest shores of the islands would be more susceptible to a large wave than the, say, south and southeast facing beaches in the Hawaiian Islands. So again, it would be coming from this direction. But notice the advisories are for the entire, all of the islands, every single aspect of the coast. So, you know, it's something that I'm sure that the folks in Hawaii, especially the emergency managers, are getting the word out that, hey, heads up, if we get a big wave in Hawaii, it'll happen sooner there than it will here on the West Coast. Because they're simply closer to where the earthquake originated. I haven't had a chance to look at the timing of that yet, but again, it's something that the folks in the 50th state, I'm sure, are taking very seriously.
Yeah, I'm sure they're definitely watching things closely, as are the people who are up and down the West Coast. I mean, I remember back in 2011, I was a reporter down in Medford, so we covered the Southern Oregon coast, Northern California coast, and even though, you know, the damage wasn't super extensive, right, people generally were not hurt, it still impacted the people who fished down there, their boats, the docks. Yeah. It still definitely took a toll on many of their lives. So I'm sure that they're also watching down that way, especially in these communities where they rely on fishing and, you know, they're looking at their boats, trying to make sure that they're properly secured as well.
I mean, not only that, there's an emotional toll here too, because it's like something bad may be about to happen, so people are getting ready for that, and it just takes, as I said, there's an emotional toll of that. You have to expend a lot of energy getting ready, thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Am I ready? Where am I going to go? Is the boat okay? All of those kinds of things. So I'm going to show you the warning map here again for Alaska, because just like Hawaii, the western edge of the Aleutian Peninsula here, the western half really, is under a tsunami advisory there. It's still just a watch from here up through Anchorage, down through Juneau and Ketchikan, where the watch ends. And then that central coast of BC, interestingly enough, not under a watch. It may just be that they're protected a bit from Haida Gwaii. I'm not exactly sure why that part of the coast is left out of the watch, but nonetheless, the coast of Alaska is definitely in a watch, and the coast of the Northwest also in the watch, as we mentioned earlier, including the Puget Sound, or at least a good part of it, not all the way down. But for the entire Oregon coast, we are under that tsunami watch. And again, if we see this upgraded to an advisory or a warning, the arrival time of any tsunami wave will be later on this evening, I think after 10 o'clock, more like 11 o'clock. And we'll have to wait and see what the geologists pin down on this as we go forward. Now, something else I can talk about, there's a network of buoys out over the Pacific Ocean called DART buoys, and those are specifically designed to measure tsunami waves. And as I mentioned earlier, a tsunami wave out over the deep ocean is barely even noticeable. If you were out in a boat, you wouldn't even see it going by. You wouldn't feel anything. Very shallow. But those special buoys, the DART buoys, that are deployed and developed and maintained by NOAA, another critical program and job that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration takes on and does for us, that DART buoy network will detect the energy of those tsunamis. And that's one of the ways that we are able to warn for tsunamis before they reach the coast. So again, it's a really critical program and infrastructure out there over the open ocean that is maintained by NOAA, Christine.
And I know you had mentioned that if we were to get a tsunami in our area on our coastline, it wouldn't get here until, 11 p.m. this evening, late tonight. But the National Weather Service Tsunami Center has also said that the first waves could arrive to Hawaii by 7 9:17 p.m. That is Hawaii time. So, as you also said, that those waves, if they were going to hit Hawaii, Honolulu, they would come first, and then we would then be a little bit later on.
Yeah, so that might be a bit of a warning for us. Also, the times that I mentioned, those may be updated as we get better forecasting coming in, more information coming in about the magnitude of the earthquake, which you already know, but about how that energy field is expanding and radiating outward from where the earthquake originated off the Kamchatka Peninsula on the east coast of Russia. So those times may be updated. You mentioned 7:40 Hawaii time. Well, they're what, 3 hours ahead of us now? So that's like 10 o'clock, 10:30 our time when we would be seeing or hearing about the arrival of any tsunami waves in Hawaii. So something else to keep in mind in terms of the timing. And again, I'm sure that timing will be updated and, honed in on more as we get more information coming in.
And I know, Matt, you rely on, NOAA, National Weather Service, all these components working together to make sure people get the information they need to stay safe and be aware of what's going on. What are you going to be looking at throughout this evening, trying to track this potential tsunami?
I'm going to be looking at what the Tsunami Warning Center puts out, frankly. I mean, as a forecaster of weather, forecasting tsunami waves is a completely different science. So I have enough background knowledge to speak to it and talk about it, but really, I'm not going to be forecasting my own forecast times for tsunami arrival time. That's going to be done by the folks at the Tsunami Warning Center up in Anchorage, and that's what everybody is going to be relying on, as we should, because it is a very complex science. It's not easy to do, and they do a tremendous job with it, just to even get these watches and warnings out hours ahead of time like this. So we'll be paying close attention to that. The other thing we'll be paying close attention to is whether or not we get any big aftershocks. And by aftershocks, we could get aftershock earthquakes that are 6.0 magnitude, even 7.0 magnitude. And if that happens, that could generate more tsunami activity as well. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So far, it's this 8.0 magnitude. I think there might have been a couple of aftershocks of smaller magnitude already, but I'll be watching that to see if we get more earthquake activity, and then whether or not we start seeing reports of tsunami waves on the coast of Alaska, up in the Aleutians, eventually in Hawaii, and anywhere else where these waves make landfall. And these could travel clear down to South America. That's how much energy these waves have. So again, it's a very complex science, and it's a great job that NOAA does in forecasting these for us here on the West Coast.
Yeah, and I know people streaming us right now, just hopping on. So I want to recap a little bit of what we've been talking about. We've had some breaking news of a strong earthquake that sparked a tsunami watch for the entire West Coast. That quake, an 8.7, hit off the coast of Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. Matt's been monitoring it. A tsunami watch in place now from Alaska all the way down to the Mexico border. And a watch means a distant earthquake has struck. A tsunami is possible. So those on the coast should be prepared, keeping an eye out for this information. Matt, can you run us through a little bit more of, where this is kind of hitting, where the watches are?
So the earthquake is here where this yellow dot is, happened at 4:24 p.m. our time. It's an 8.0 magnitude, which is an incredibly strong earthquake. That is a big boy earthquake for sure. This is part of the coast of Russia here. This is, again, the Kamchatka Peninsula, and these are the Aleutian Islands that extend up to Alaska. It was just offshore, and that means that the water was displaced by the movement of the earth with that earthquake. That's why we end up with tsunamis. Remember, a tsunami is a wave of water out over the ocean, open ocean. It's barely detectable, but when that wave of energy reaches shore, then it amplifies and you can get very large waves. So we've got the tsunami watch up for the entire coast of Oregon and Washington, much of Alaska, and down into, as you said, to Mexico. If we get a tsunami wave, and it's not certain that we do, we could get through this with nothing, then it's most likely going to be arriving here on the West Coast, Christine, sometime around 11 p.m., give or take, and we'll be able to nail that timing down better as we move forward in time. This is a live shot from our affiliate KHNL in Honolulu, and you can see, I'm sure the folks in Hawaii are watching very carefully. Christine?
We begin tonight our 6 p.m. newscast with breaking news of a strong earthquake that has now sparked a tsunami watch for the entire West Coast. The quake hit off the coast of Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. A tsunami watch is in place from Alaska down to the Mexico border. So a watch means that a distant earthquake has struck and a tsunami is possible. So those on the coast should be prepared to keep an eye out for all and any more information. This is a live look from a Skycam in Honolulu. Hawaii is now under a tsunami warning as well, which means take action. A tsunami could cause widespread flooding there. Our chief meteorologist, Matt Zaffino, tracking what's going on. Matt, with these watches and warnings, can you give us a bit of a deeper explanation as to what you're watching?
So what we'll be watching is how the timing evolves for any potential waves that this earthquake may have developed. So here's where the earthquake was, off the coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula. This, of course, is Russia. There's Japan down here. This is the coast of Alaska, and then Oregon and Washington over on the far edge of this particular map. That's a very, very strong earthquake, and the fact that it happened just offshore means that when the earth moved with the earthquake, it displaced water. Now, that energy wave will be very, very shallow. You don't see much of a wave over the deep water ocean, but when it reaches shore, that's when it amplifies into the tsunami wave that can cause damage. So we are under a tsunami watch here on the west coast of Oregon and Washington down to California. Same thing in Alaska, but up in Hawaii, where you see the orange colors, the western half of the Aleutian Peninsula, that's a tsunami advisory, meaning that they're expecting at least a minimal wave from this earthquake. So they're preparing for tsunami action on the west coast of, or on the western edge of the peninsula of the Aleutian Peninsula. Down in Hawaii, my map indicating that it's still a tsunami advisory, but I've been told that that has been upgraded to tsunami warning for Hawaii, which means that they're preparing for a tsunami wave down there. I don't know how big of a wave they're preparing for yet because I've been on the air for the last half hour, haven't been able to check, but nonetheless, they're preparing for the worst, basically, in Hawaii right now. It would arrive, any tsunamis that were generated will arrive in Hawaii before they would arrive here on the west coast because Hawaii is closer to the source. That source being that earthquake, that 8.0 magnitude off the coast of Russia right there. The latest I looked at said probably about 10 o'clock our time for Hawaii and more like 11 o'clock, 11:30 if any waves reach here to the west coast, Oregon and Washington, Christine. So again, we'll keep you updated as these watches, advisories, and warnings evolve. Back to you.
On things as they develop again, an 8.7 or so magnitude quake hitting just off the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. Matt, really appreciate you keeping an eye on this, and we'll check back in with you a little bit later.
Sounds good.
Thanks. And we are also following breaking news out of McMinnville, where a propane tank fire has triggered evacuations. Police say a car crashed into the tank at the Wilco Farm.
Folks, we're picking up coverage of that massive earthquake and the tsunami alerts that are really getting folks on edge across the country. We can see Hawaii impacted, Alaska, and much of the west coast of the continental United States under some form of tsunami alert. Our chief meteorologist, Brad Panovich, is joining us here in the Live Impact News studio. Brad, we saw you have been watching this very closely. This is among the largest earthquakes to ever strike.
Yeah, it's really concerning in a couple points. One, 8.7, that's going to put it in top 10 biggest quakes in world history. It's also I'm looking at some of the seismograph data just to get a little geeky on you and look at some of the data. I was kind of looking at what kind of quake this was. You remember faults can slide different ways. They can slide side to side, they can strike. This was unfortunately the worst kind for a tsunami. It's called a mega thrust. There was a huge uplift that displaced a lot of water. So looking at the sensor data, this was a mega thrust earthquake, which typically means huge tsunamis. And that's the kind of Indonesian earthquake, the Japanese earthquake, which ended up producing massive tsunamis as well. So the type of quake, and it was only 12 miles deep. So that's a bad sign for a tsunami. So you're seeing all these upgrades to the West Coast being under a tsunami watch, Hawaii, most of the Central Pacific under tsunami warnings, because there's a very high likelihood there'll be a tsunami. We don't know the size of the wave. That's always the difficult forecast part. You don't know, but looking at some of the first waves coming into the peninsula there in Russia, it's a pretty sizable wave that's moving in there. The next area would be hit would be the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, and then the west coast of Canada, eventually the west coast of the United States, and then Hawaii, Guam, even Japan, Hawaii, Midway, Tahiti, all these areas in the Central Pacific would be impacted. Now, the timeline, these things travel at like 600 to 700 miles an hour in the open ocean. And you wouldn't even know it if you're on a boat because they're all underwater. It's when they get near the coast, Vanessa, they start getting bigger and bigger because It's not that the wave is getting bigger, it's that the seafloor is coming up, obviously, as it gets shallower and shallower. So it causes the wave to get really large. And so depending on the shape of the coast and the continental shelf, you can get bigger waves in some areas and smaller waves in others. And then the shape of the bays and the coastline, there's all these fine nuances about wave science, about how that works. But there's a good reason Hawaii is now blasting out tsunami warnings along the coast, because they're likely going to get a direct hit, probably around their time, 7:15, 7:20ish. So about 6 hours from the quake. So think of an airplane. If it was traveling from the west coast to Hawaii, it takes about 6 hours. It's about how long it's going to take for the tsunami to get to Hawaii.
And now you were saying the fact that you wouldn't be able to really detect it visibly if you were on a boat.
Yeah.
I presume there are ways to measure, like buoys, where they probably keep track of, hey, this wave is coming and it's maybe this size. I don't know what the buoys track.
Yeah, so there's these floating buoys. They're called dart buoys. They're all over the Pacific. They're actually specifically designed for detecting tsunamis. And what they're doing is they're looking for column changes in the water. They're subtle. If you looked at the raw data, you say, wow, the water column only moved a couple feet. Well, that's a sign of a pretty good tsunami passing under. So one of the things they do when there's a tsunami warning in the Pacific, normally we get data from the buoys like sometimes every 10 minutes, 5 minutes. They go to 15-second updates. So the data starts transmitting almost in real time. And so we can monitor some of these buoys. So I'm just actually looking at some of them right now just to see what the data looks like. And there's two things you look for. It's tsunamis are kind of weird. You look for a drop in water before the rise, because as a wave builds, remember there's a crest and a trough in the waves. And before a big wave approaches you, you're going to be in water receding because it's building back towards that. So I'm looking at some of these off the coast of, let's say, the Aleutian Islands. I'm looking at Attu, Alaska here. The water column is actually decreasing, which means there's likely a tsunami heading towards the Aleutian Islands. So I would be shocked if there wasn't a tsunami. To me, the only question is how big. And unfortunately, a lot of areas are susceptible in the Central Pacific. I just got back from Hawaii, ironically enough, just 2 weeks ago, and the first thing you notice going around all the islands, there's tsunami sirens everywhere, all along the coast. My kids noticed them. I was pointing them out. They're solar powered. There's these tall towers with multiple sirens on them, and I was telling my kids, I'm like, those are tsunami warning sirens, and I said we got to be careful of earthquake anywhere in the Pacific when you're in Hawaii. It's just not on Hawaii. Earthquakes in Alaska, the West Coast, Mexico, South America, Russia, over there towards Japan and Indonesia. Some of the biggest quakes in Alaska have caused tsunamis in Hawaii. In fact, one of the areas I visited there, we were on Oahu, and for some reason I was following the Oahu emergency management. I think because I was there was a flood warning, so I was following them on Twitter, and they just put out an alert. But on Oahu, the north side of the island, we were touring some of the old bases from Pearl Harbor. And one of the bases on the north side of the island we went to visit, there's only one thing left of that base. It's a little machine gunner bunker. And you think it was destroyed in Pearl Harbor. No, it was destroyed by a tsunami.
Wow.
It was the first base that actually shot at the planes that were coming in during Pearl Harbor. But there was a tsunami about 4 years later from an earthquake up in the Alaskan Aleutian Isles, and it destroyed the entire base, and that was on the north shore of Oahu. So they have a long history of massive tsunamis in Hawaii, so they take them very seriously. So there's a very good warning system there.
Well, now speaking of warnings and alerts, I mean, I kind of had to give myself a little bit of a crash course when we first broke the news, because it was around 7 o'clock late in that hour here on Live Impact, where we learned that there was a tsunami alert for, I believe it was Hawaii, and it was a watch at that point.
Yeah.
And to kind of steal how you've explained watches and warnings to us, it seems like there are different levels based on what elements are there versus what they think could be there.
Yeah.
So we actually have that map, and you alluded to this before with the different colors. And so there are areas that are under warnings, areas that are under watches. There's an advisory that's that orange color, and then they have this purple threat.
Yeah, so it can be a bit confusing because the earthquake first happens, right? And I got the first alert because, believe it or not, I have alerts for large earthquakes across the world always set on my phone. And when I saw 8.0, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a big quake. thought that was big. And then you may have noticed it got upgraded to an 8.7. Well, the reason that happens is the preliminary data, maybe one sensor measures it, but as the seismic waves travel across the entire world, even seismographs here in North Carolina will detect that quake. As more data goes in, they can kind of triangulate and get a better idea of how big the quake was. So when you see this upgrade, it's not because they didn't know at first, it's just more data is coming in. The same thing happens with the tsunamis. So when you first see a 5 or an 8.0 earthquake, they run a model that said, hey, do large quakes in this location at this depth typically cause a tsunami? And if there's like a 50% chance yes, they'll just issue a watch or an advisory for the entire Pacific just to give people an early heads up. And then as more data comes in, they'll either upgrade or downgrade that watch or advisory to a warning. And so that's why you see the initial thing, because it's all about getting the word out as soon as possible so people have time to go to higher ground. And as I'm saying that, one of my former colleagues in WWL is actually in Hawaii right now.
Oh, wow.
And she replied to my tweet about a mega thrust earthquake, and she's showing me video of them driving to higher ground right now.
Oh, my goodness.
So they were like us. They were just there on vacation, and because she said, oh, you're not making me feel any better. When I saw that it was a mega thrust quake, she looks like she's stuck in traffic, evacuating to higher ground. There's a line of traffic. I don't know what island she's on, but she's in Hawaii right now. She said Laura Buchtel, she used to be a meteorologist at WWL, our sister station in New Orleans. So looks like she's got the whole family in the car, and they're on their way.
Oh, I can see. We have kind of in our preview monitor.
So I'm trying to make it bigger.
Do you want us to show it?
Yeah, so you can show it. So she sent this to
Impact Coast.
So just so people who are watching our stream, Laura's a good friend of mine. She's out of TV. She's actually a meteorologist, but she got out of TV. This is her and her family currently in Hawaii. I'm not sure what island on, but they're in evacuation line right now, trying to head to higher ground. I don't know if the audio, I know we have audio, I can't hear it.
We do have audio, and it sounds like there's a
Quote,
traffic.
you are in danger.
Turning the radio up there, so that's probably
According to the alert.
traffic there.
Get
all
away
going north, so
from
they got the
coastal
alerts
waters.
right away. And like I said, they don't mess around in Hawaii. I think it was a really good thing the way they warn people. They have the phone system, they have the radio, and obviously those sirens all over the island. And people know to go to higher ground, and they have these great signage of evacuation routes on where to go. So especially if you're like a tourist like Laura is, it's pretty easy to find like where you need to go. And the good thing about Hawaii as well, there's a lot of mountains and high ground to go to. You just got to get away from the coast. So that's a video from her, and you can see that line. It looks like everybody's going out. Just looking at
According to the alert, get away from coastal waters.
But yeah, that's a video of them evacuating Hawaii currently. Remember, 6-hour difference from us. So right now there, it's basically 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So it's the middle of the afternoon over there right now. And that's the other good thing about these alerts. They're getting them in the middle of the day and not in the middle of the night. Because when I was there, we got a WIA alert on my phone, and I'll be honest with you, the first thing I thought was tsunami. But luckily, it was a flash flood warning for the other side of the island, which I say luckily, it was still a flash flood warning, but it was for the mountainous area on the other side of the island. But the first thing I thought, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and our phone goes off in the hotel, and I'm thinking tsunami right away. And unfortunately, this one's real. This is the real deal here for the folks in Hawaii.
Yeah, and there was something interesting, too, that you brought to our attention, and I don't think we actually got to show the graphic since you've come here into the Live Impact News studio, the fact that there was some sort of activity picked up in our area because of this.
Yeah.
Not that folks would maybe feel it. I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, here we've got the graphic now. We can share it.
So what you're looking at here, this is the seismograph from Taylorsville. Now, this just goes to show you how connected the whole world is. Remember, go back to 8th, 10th grade, 9th grade, whatever you took geology class, if you took any geology, the Earth has, a molten core mantle, right? And it has this thin crust. It's basically, if you looked at it on a large scale, it's basically the thickness of an eggshell. And so when there's an earthquake in that crust on the other side of the world, those seismic waves travel really quickly through that liquid molten rock, and they make it all the way here to the Carolinas pretty quickly. They're called P waves. They're the primary waves, and then the secondary waves will come. So we don't feel them because it's kind of like a low frequency thing that you couldn't hear or feel, but the seismographs are sensitive enough to pick them up. So When you see those giant waves like that and how they go on for a long time there, that's actually a look at those P waves. And so they make it all the way to the Carolinas. So it's one of those things. And that seismograph right there, Vanessa, could have been one of the ones they used to help calculate the 8.7, because as the waves hit seismographs, not only here, but all over the world, that data then goes into a computer and they can calculate the actual magnitude. So as those waves traveled around the world, that's why you saw the upgrade to an 8.7 as more data was collected on the waves.
Yeah, you actually made me think of something that we were hoping to get more context on, and that is the magnitude, because I feel like the last time we had to talk about an earthquake here on Live Impact, we had a really great explainer from our weather impact team about how the degrees of magnitude multiply. And when people think 7 versus 8, or maybe 8 versus 8.7, it kind of doesn't sound like a lot in our brain.
No.
But that's a massive difference.
Yeah, so it's what they consider, the magnitude goes up pretty much, like, I would say it's not exponential, but for every degree or point that you go up, you're seeing a massive increase in power. So you would think a small increase from, let's say, a 2.0 to a 3.0 isn't really that big, but it's actually huge. It's like 1,000,000 times stronger.
Yeah.
You know? And so I wish I could show you the chart, but especially to get the higher ones. But
We can probably show you.
But,
Do you want us to pull it?
Yeah, so I think it's on my laptop. So this will give you a good example of, so the left side is the magnitude, the right side is the energy, and there's really good examples here. So like a magnitude 4 earthquake, is about, 15,000 times, stronger than a magnitude 3. And then you go up and you see some of these, like Krakatoa eruption, which is a massive eruption in 1883. That's a 6. And you see at the very top of this list, so that, I can't even pronounce it, Chicxulub impact 66 million years ago.
Whoa.
You know what that is? That was
The Big Bang?
No, that was...
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I wish we had...
Nope, that doesn't make any sense.
Estimated energy released by the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs.
Oh, okay.
That landed on the Yucatan Peninsula. So that gives you... But Chile is the biggest one, Alaska in 1964. But you see Japan and Sumatra. So that's the Japanese earthquake. Think Fukushima. Sumatra, that's the Boxing Day tsunami in the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific. That was in 2004. Those are around 9.0. So you see how exponentially this stuff goes up pretty quickly. So it's not, what we call exponential, but it is pretty close to that as far. So when you go up these like 0.2, 0.3, you think, oh, it's just a little increase. That is 10, 100 times, 1,000 times stronger as you go up in energy. So it is really massive. So the right side shows you the energy right there. Average EF5 tornado, about 300,000 tons of TNT. Mount St. Helens, 9.5 million tons of TNT. So that increase, that's a 4 to a 5. So you went from 300,000 to 9.5 million. That increase is huge. So these subtle, like 0.2, 0.3s are pretty significant. And that's why, an East Coast earthquake that's 5.1 or 4.8 is pretty significant for us, because we usually get 1 and 2s, but a 3 or 4 or 5 is a huge increase.
I'm probably getting into the weeds here, and so just stop me and we can just walk back out of the weeds. But the Chicxulub impact.
Yeah, impact.
That's, I could see on the graph, it's comparable with a 10.
With a 10,
Did they pick that because that is just like the largest explosion that they could ever think of that has happened on the planet?
We weren't here to record that, but that's based on just geologic information and kind of an estimate of how big that was.
That's fascinating.
So that's an asteroid impact, if you will. And you see some volcanic eruptions on there, some of these big. There's a nuclear bomb test on there as well, the largest nuclear bomb test, which I think is a Russian test. It was Tsar-Bomba, which I'm not sure what that was, but that was actually the equivalent of a 5.5 earthquake. Meteor crater impact is on there. If you've ever been to Arizona, that's the meteor impact there. That's down there around a 4.8. So it gives you some, because remember, if the Earth is impacted by a large object, it's going to cause essentially an earthquake, because it will shake the whole Earth like that. And obviously volcanic eruptions will do the same thing.
Tsar Bomba, by the way, just had to run through the Google machine. The most powerful nuclear weapon ever created and tested, detonated in 1961. 50 megatons of TNT.
50 megatons, yeah.
Wow.
And that's only like a 5.5 earthquake.
That's
So
incredible.
Tonight we had 8.7.
Yeah.
That gives you all you need to know. That's the equivalent, of several hundred of those. You're getting to 9 trillion kilotons of power. I mean, it's just, these numbers can get so high, it just blows your mind. But that's the kind of energy release. And so think about that happening in the Pacific Ocean, that movement of water. The best way I can describe a tsunami to somebody is if you're ever in the bathtub or the pool, take your arms underwater and pull them out of the water real quick. You displace water. And it's a swimming pool or bathtub, so those waves are tiny, but in the Pacific, those are going to be giant waves that are going to move across the entire ocean. Because what happened is the crust below that plate, that thrust, the mega thrust plate there off the coast of Russia, probably, I'll have to look at the data, it could have came up 3 or 4 or 5 feet. I know the Sumatra earthquake, I think it came up like 10 feet. So it displaces so much water under the ocean, and that just creates giant waves across the entire Pacific basin, and those will bounce around for days. We might see waves that go back and forth across the Pacific well into the end of the week. They might be smaller waves, but the bigger waves will be coming here later today.
Yeah. I think about, too, some of the ways not only that we try to gather information, but also ways that we as a society in general prepare for these types of natural disasters. And I think about my mom grew up in the Pacific Ring of Fire. I mean, she's from the Philippines, and so I've heard stories about the different, weather impacts and in this case, earthquakes and such that they have to think about and prepare. And I'm just wondering, Brad, in your visits over to Hawaii, whether you were able to kind of see, other than, I know you mentioned like the sirens and things, but are there ways that you've learned that they maybe have special ways that they do their structures or things like that? Did you happen to see that, evidence of that?
Yeah, on the coast, because they don't get a lot of hurricanes in the Hawaiian Islands. They have Iniki, which is obviously a famous one as a Category 4, but, they're actually pretty small set of islands. So just from a target standpoint, it's really kind of rare for a hurricane to get there. But the ocean water in the Central Pacific is pretty cool. So most of the big hurricanes go to the south or they dissipate by the time they get there. But what I noticed on the coast was a lot of the buildings still were built up like on stilts. And I kept thinking, well, they're not susceptible to storm surge like we are here in the southeast. So I kind of wondered, and I thought to myself, well, this has got to be for tsunamis, right?
Yeah.
Because they built there's probably a code, I would imagine, on the coast that you have to build above a certain height for minimal tsunamis, because they're always going to have the threat for even small tsunamis. And when I say small, I'm talking, possibly 1 to 2 meters, which is just, anywhere from 2 to 3 feet in some cases. But in many cases, you get these massive ones, and you can't really build for those, obviously. But I do wonder, like some of these coastal residents, if they had to reinforce their house for possibly larger tsunamis. But what I would say is that the warning system is kind of their best technique, is to get people out of harm's way. The properties, they can go, but they don't want to lose lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing. I will tell you, they moved a lot of their infrastructure away from the coast. You don't see power plants and water treatment plants near the coast, I think, for this reason, because they don't want those to get damaged. But you still have a lot of ports. You still have a lot of vacation resorts and stuff near the coast. So there's still going to be a lot of people that will be at risk from these waves once they get to the Hawaiian Islands. I'm just trying to check the timeline here.
Yeah.
So right now is looking like Hawaii is around the first arrival of waves in tsunami waves in Hawaii is around 7:17 p.m. Hawaiian Standard Time. So that's going to be coming up closer to like our midnight to 1 a.m. time frame. So it'll be pitch black here when we see this in the wee hours of the morning here, but this will be happening in the evening, right before sunset. I believe when I was over there, sunset was around 7:30 at the time.
Yeah.
So this should be right before sunset for them. So there are live streams we're probably going to be able to see these waves coming in. And I've been looking through my X account, and you're seeing some of the Russian video coming in from the immediate coast there, and there certainly was a tsunami there. Pretty significant tsunami too.
Well,
now that's really close to the coast, into the epicenter, so you don't know how big those waves are going to be as they get further out in the ocean. But the fact that one has actually been detected there in Russia tells you that one has been generated.
Well, and I think just a few moments ago you brought up a good point about, you know, why it's so important to prepare even for, I guess, what you might call a minor tsunami. I remember, I think it was in our 8 o'clock hour when we learned about the fact that the alerts were expanding. And we saw that Japan had, basically their weather agency said it was expecting this tsunami that was about 3 feet. And that, I think, to us sounds minimal for, you know, an amount of water. But then I think about when we tell people about turn around, don't drown, and the different levels, how little amounts of water, just inches of water, can carry somebody away, carry away cars. When you get to about a foot, I think, right here, when we talk about flooding, just in the Carolinas, that's major.
Yep. And the thing about these tsunamis, which is really kind of hard for people to grasp, is sometimes the first waves aren't the biggest. So what often happens is you'll see the first wave come in and people sometimes are like, oh, it wasn't so bad. And the second, third, fourth wave, because there's a series of waves. The best way I could describe this, if you ever thrown a rock in a pond, there's not one ripple, right? There's tons of them. And so that's what happens in these earthquakes. There's this whole area of the crust ruptured over a really long area. So the wave was generated not in a single point, but over a long distance. So there will be a series of waves that come. And sometimes, just like with ocean waves, 2 waves can kind of team up. If you're a surfer, you see 2 swells come together, you're like, that's the one I'm surfing because it's going to be a bigger wave. This happens with the tsunami waves as well. They could kind of coalesce and turn into bigger waves as they move in. I'm just noticing it looks like I'm seeing the warning still for all of Hawaii, but they're starting to expand some threats to Central America even on the tsunami warning page.
Wow.
So they're expecting this to be a Pacific-wide tsunami, because you're starting to see alerts go up for the west coast of Chile, even New Zealand and the South Pacific.
That's major.
And so what they're doing, they have these 3, if you've ever been, you probably have never gone, but I'm looking at it right now. So you got these multiple levels. You got the threat, watch, advisory, warning. So the threat means, hey, the model says you might have a tsunami. The watch means we think there's one coming, the ingredients are there, and then advisory is like we expect one, we just don't know how big, and then a warning is like kind of the guarantee. So it's a 4-step process. But the fact that more islands and areas are added to the purple pins on the map, that means they expect a threat from a tsunami, possibly even a small one. Because remember, even a 1 foot or 2 foot tsunami, it's not a big deal, but it causes some crazy currents, and it is something, especially for folks on the coast, if they're in boats, they're going to want to pay attention to. So it's been a while since I've seen the whole Pacific lit up like that on the tsunami warning page.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point in that I feel like when we looked at this map last, I don't know if we really had anything in the southern hemisphere. And you're seeing now, because I think the farthest south we had at that point was maybe the California-Mexico border, and there might have been some purple pins. You know, I think Midway Island was in there. But I see it now. Peru, Colombia, and then Panama, Nicaragua.
So you're getting these alerts all the way down to there. And these are considered threat. Okay, so I'm reading now, 1 to 3 meter possibility. So the Cook Islands. So now we're getting some actual forecast, which is kind of interesting. So I might want to look at the Hawaii one, because number 3 here, they still haven't put a total on it. So sometimes we can get a travel map in forecasted, totals, but I think they're waiting to see more data come from the North Pacific. So what they're going to do is they're going to wait for data to come in from the areas around the Aleutian Islands where they're seeing, and sometimes you can get actual observations up there. So I'm kind of curious. I'm going to see if we got no observations up there yet.
Okay.
So every once in a while we'll get an observation from the Aleutian Islands. I'm going to see where Alaska's coming in.
While you look at that, Brad, I think we should do a reset because we might have some new folks joining us here on Live Impact News. We're reaching the bottom of the hour at this point, so our coverage of this massive earthquake and tsunami advisory for multiple parts of the globe. We've been covering this now for the past, I'd say, 2 hours at this point. Brad, you've been watching these alerts develop and also kind of how the reporting of the magnitude has changed. We're up to 8.7. You were saying this is among the top 10 ever strongest earthquakes.
So just to give you perspective, I know Jeb can take my laptop. So the USGS has a great map. It's an ironic way to use it tonight. But so these are the 10 largest earthquakes ever recorded in the world. Number one on this list, you could see, I'm gonna make sure I zoom in on it. It's down in Chile, a 9.5 in 1960. Number two is the biggest quake in the U.S. It's a 9.2 in 1964 in Alaska. But number 8 is 8.7 on this list, and number 9 is 8.6. So tonight's quake would be somewhere between number 8 and 9. So that would put us in the bottom of the top 10, but one of the top 10 largest quakes ever recorded on the Earth. So that's a massive quake, and this is by far the biggest quake detected in the U.S. In the Pacific, since it looks like the 2010 Chile quake, and it would be the largest quake worldwide since the Japanese quake in 2011, which obviously caused a huge tsunami in eastern part of Japan, and obviously caused that horrible nuclear accident at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. So that is pretty stunning to see a quake of that magnitude happen. You notice a lot of the big quakes do happen in the Pacific Rim. That's what is considered the Ring of Fire, because most of the plates in the Pacific are all subduction zones where plates are going under each other. You got volcanoes, and what happens, the subduction zone is where you got two plates going like this. One's diving under the other one. And the reason you get big quakes, because sometimes they get stuck for a while, and all of a sudden when they let loose, they have a huge quake or a huge rupture, and because of that, that's where you get the uplift, or even a push down of the seafloor will cause waves then above in the water above them. So it's not only where you get big quakes and big volcanoes, but it's where we get a lot of tsunamis as well.
And for folks who are, indeed, if you are just joining us, it sounds like, Brad is giving us an estimated time of arrival for some of these waves potentially. Here on the East Coast, we'd probably think this would be the overnight hours, but over there it's the middle of the afternoon, and it could hit in the evening, right, for them? Yeah,
so I got some actual times and possible tsunami heights, the first 4, and this will be updated, by the way. Please, you got to keep checking back with this because as new data comes in. So we've got some Alaska times, but I'm going to show you some of the first West Coast. So Washington State, they're forecasting, which is 23:35 Pacific, daylight time, which is basically going to be coming up close to midnight or slightly after. Long Beach up there in Washington, and they're forecasting anywhere from a foot to 1.4. But what's interesting is down in California, they're forecasting these to come in between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning local time. The heights are a little bit higher, like 3.1 to 5.7 feet in Crescent City, and like San Francisco, less than a foot, but Santa Barbara, maybe a foot to 1.7. So it's going to be different in different locations, and that's all has to do with the shape of the coast and the continental shelf. These things all play into. That's why some areas closer to the quake could actually have smaller waves than areas farther away. This happens a lot in some of these. It just depends on the shape of the seafloor, the continental shelf, which is the run up to the beach, and obviously the shape of the coast. So places that have like concave shaped bays where the waves can come in and kind of amplify, they could have higher. So you're starting to see, the good news is I'm not seeing crazy high numbers for the West Coast, but that's significant. I mean, some of these areas 3-4 feet above normal mean level with waves, that will cause flooding on the coast and could cause damage to ports and areas on the beaches, because some of these areas probably aren't used to getting water that high because they're not used to, for us this would be like storm surge, right? Like we'd have storm surge we're kind of used to, but some areas on the West Coast aren't used to huge storms like this producing, they'll produce waves but not surges of water like this.
Yeah, I mean, think I referenced this before, the fact that when we're seeing, some of these estimates come in, they are kind of seemingly ranging, at least in this case, between, it seems like a foot up to maybe 3 we're seeing in Japan.
Yeah.
And I think for folks who have this image of this massive wave,
Yeah.
that they go, well, 1 foot, I mean,
Yeah.
but think about having a foot of water come in to where
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
That can cause a lot of concern.
And sometimes tsunamis, they don't look like waves. They just look like a rapid rise in the ocean. Like it doesn't look like a wave you would surf on, or like the waves you go at the beach. It just looks like all of a sudden it's like a super high tide that happens in like a matter of seconds.
Mhm.
The water just comes up. It rises quickly, and that's why it's kind of weird. You see videos from like the Japanese tsunami and the Indian Ocean Boxing Day tsunami. You see people on the beach kind of staring out there and going, well, what is that? And they don't really realize what's happening until the water's like on top of them.
Wow.
And because it doesn't look like a wave, it just looks like, you look out in the ocean, like it just looks weird. And then all of a sudden the water is like on you, and instead of like the wave coming in and breaking and going back out into sea, it just keeps coming inland. It just keeps coming. There's like, because there's more push behind it, so the water just keeps coming up. If you ever seen videos of tidal bores, which are like this, which is a rapid rise in water, sometimes that move up the mouth of rivers, you'll see that. I do notice that the West Coast has been upgraded to an advisory from a watch. So I think that's because now we have actual forecasted tsunami waves of, even if it's a foot, like you said,
wow, yeah.
that still is like, now we know there's probably going to at least be a tsunami of some kind. So yeah, you're seeing the orange now updated for the West Coast, and I'll read this real quick. So yeah, tsunami advisory remains in effect. This is all for Oregon, Washington, California, British Columbia, Alaska, the Aleutian Islands. So yeah, they updated all this to an advisory with those totals. The highest total I saw, Vanessa, was 5.7 feet at the high end in Crescent City, California, which, based on the name of that Crescent City, if I'm pretty familiar with Crescent City, I would guess that the bay is a crescent shaped, which probably means it would have pretty high waves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the map of California, and the thing I always look at is the shape. So you see all the nooks and crannies here. You look like San Francisco Bay is pretty well protected, so the waves can't get in there. But you come down towards Santa Cruz, you've got a shape there where Seaside could get clobbered because the waves would get caught in there. And then down towards Santa Barbara, it's kind of protected a little bit. But then you got areas like Santa Maria and up towards San Luis Obispo. That area is kind of more out there. So those are the kind of coastline areas that probably would get higher waves than maybe further north. And then you go up the coast of Oregon, Washington, into British Columbia. You've got a lot of more nooks and crannies there, so there's things to break the wave energy up and not cause it to be as high. But unfortunately for Hawaii, they don't have anything to break them. They're out here, and obviously you see my tropical systems, how they're all going around Hawaii. But there's Hawaii. Midway is over here, by the way. That's Midway, which is ironically in Midway across the Pacific.
There
That's
you
where it
go.
gets named. But it's just a little atoll. There's like an airfield there, and there's a military base there and some barracks, and that's all it is. It's amazing when you think about the war in the Pacific, how that island was fought over. It is a tiny speck of land on an atoll out there.
Yeah.
But that is technically part of the Hawaiian island chain, because you can see geographically and geologically that's all a line of islands. There's actually tiny islands between Midway all the way down to Kauai, which is the northern island of Hawaii. That's actually where I was in Oahu and Kauai and those areas. That's why I worry about Kauai, because this is the most northern big island of the chain, and so it would probably get the most direct hit, the areas on the west coast there. So thinking like the Nepali coast, which is pretty much uninhabited, but there's a bunch of beaches there. Waimea is right there. So that west coast of Kauai is probably going to be very susceptible.
Yeah. For folks who haven't heard the origin of this tsunami, alert that we're seeing kind of to different degrees around the globe at this point, was an earthquake just off the coast of Russia. And I don't know if we've talked about this, Brad. I heard you allude, though, earlier to the fact that, you'd be on the look for aftershocks.
Yeah.
But I mean, just looking at the National Weather Service Tsunami Alert Center, it does look like in recent days they were looking at some seismic activity around looks like Alaska, they had on the 27th. Looks like yesterday, the Macquarie Islands region. So I'm just wondering, was there a lead up
There could have been 4 shocks. There probably were that we didn't even know, but I'm seeing it's upgraded again to 8.8, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, that now you're definitely in the top 6 or 7 quakes of all time. Thank goodness. In some ways, this was offshore, because this was over land or closer to land. There would have been massive destruction from the quake itself.
Yeah.
8.8, and even the pager, which this is the USGS page that I look at, and the pager system, which kind of estimates fatalities, puts the fatality rate from 1 to 1,000 here, with 44% probability of 10 to 100 fatalities, and then damage, economic losses. But you can see the peninsula, it's off the coast there of the peninsula here. I guess it's Kamchatsky, I don't know. I am not very good at Russian, so I'm not going to try that one. But it's essentially this part of the world that we're in. It's kind of where, it's technically Russia, but it's very close to Alaska. The Aleutian Islands come all the way down there, and you're up towards North Korea and eastern China. So this is the extreme Northwest Pacific, if you will.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll bring up a bigger map so people.
I was going to say, we have
so the Bering Sea is right here.
Router 3.
So you can see the Aleutian Islands are right here. Those are those islands coming in from the right. Mm-hmm. So the Aleutian Islands are actually closer to this than mainland China. If you're in China and Russia, this peninsula sticks out, and in some cases, I think some of these islands are like the closest islands to the Russian-U.S. border right here. So this is almost in Alaska, if you will. And you see the islands stretch down, and then you go down here, and you've got Korea here, and obviously Japan. Here's Sapporo right there. So Japan's very susceptible to this as well. And then we go out in the middle of the Pacific, and then you see where Hawaii is. So just for perspective, worldwide-wise, you see the map there. This is where this occurred. It's technically in Russia, but it's actually a lot closer to the U.S. than people think.
Yeah, and on that map, and I wish we could compare it, but we do have basically where that epicenter is, if you will. That's kind of where the strongest, most serious alerts are. At least that's what it looks like. And then as we kind of go down the coast, you kind of see the alerts lighten, if you will, as Brad, were talking about the different degrees, where you have warning, advisory, watch, and then there's the threat, which is the purple pins.
So there's a lot to look at there, but you can see, like, obviously the Aleutian Islands are the first ones because they're right there, and then Hawaii's off in the warning as well because they're islands and they're just kind of in that direct line out in the middle of the Pacific, and then you see all the area on the west coast under the advisory. So you do expect it looks like one island, it might be Samoa, I think. That's got an advisory as well. No, that's Guam, I'm sorry. So Guam, and because U.S. interests tend to get, that's what the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center is, their main responsibility is for U.S. interests, but they do forecast for the entire Pacific Basin. So American Samoa and Guam and Hawaii, obviously, are big interest out there. And then Midway and obviously Alaska, and then the west coast of the U.S. So it does look like there might be a watch for Guam as well, and maybe American Samoa, which is susceptible to these in the Pacific as well. So I'm waiting to see the update from Hawaii. I haven't seen them update because I just see the warning. We've got forecast possible heights for the west coast, but not for Hawaii yet, which is kind of interesting.
Now, I am curious because you mentioned the fact that, you have a friend who shared video with you showing she's in Hawaii right now. Yeah. She's trying to, evacuate to higher ground. How long do folks usually have to camp out? Because, you mentioned the water just rises. Yeah. Does it just sit there? It's like hours?
Yeah, so
days?
Unfortunately, they could be there a while because it's going to take, like we said, just under 6 hours for the first waves to get there. But there will be waves for hours and hours after that. So what they'll probably do is they're going to wait. They are overcautious and overprepared. So what they'll do is they probably will tell people to evacuate the coast and stay there until they know that there's no more waves, or if the waves are low enough that they won't cause harm. So they could be there a while, as you mentioned. I think that's a good point. once they get there, they'll probably open shelters, because I don't think it's going to be a quick, like, hey, we're going to hang out for a couple hours and leave. It might be the better part of a day before they let people go back near the coast, because the fact that it takes 6 hours for the first wave to get there, you can imagine the subsequent waves will be coming over the next 6 to 12 hours. And now you're getting into, half a day, almost a day. So it could be tomorrow at night at this time before they say, hey, the threat is completely past, everybody head back. But the other thing is, if the first couple waves are really, really tiny, that might also give them some leeway to say, hey, it looks like these aren't going to be minor. I'm looking at some of the DART data, which the DART is some of the buoys, and they did detect a 3-foot wave in one of the locations not too far from the epicenter. So they measured at least a 3-foot rise in water there. Looks like another one about 0.9 feet. So, the way it looks is, this is the Hawaii update. I'm just clicking on here real quick just to see. So it looks like in general, they're forecasting somewhere on the order of 3-foot waves coming towards Hawaii, at least right now. So that looks to be the general forecast here.
And I mean, we think about that as being, I think you were saying we're seeing on the higher end for folks who are expecting still in the 5-foot range, right?
Yep.
I did just see there are multiple reports showing that Kamchatka area in Russia where this quake originated. They actually reported a tsunami at this point. I know you said you were looking at video 10 to 13 feet.
Yeah, so that's pretty big. And obviously that's right close to where it is. So I would expect that to be the biggest waves. They should be smaller, but you just never know. Like I said, the energy can do weird things in the open ocean. It could travel out there, and there could be waves that hit weird parts of the Pacific that we don't think are going to get big waves, and all of a sudden they get a 6 or 7 foot tsunami. Because it's just the nature of some of these waves. Remember, they got to travel over a vast area of ocean. So, as I mentioned, some of these waves could catch up to each other. There could be natural waves and natural wind and other things that make the water even higher. So there's a lot of nuance. Wave forecasting is really, really difficult, because the way the ocean behaves, especially a large ocean like the Pacific, it's hard to forecast exactly what these waves will do. But the fact that we had almost a 13-foot wave there, I think tells you that there's some sizable energy at least moving through the ocean right now.
Yeah. I mean, once again, I'm probably getting into the weeds, but you mentioned the fact that you could have outside influences that are not geological, I guess, if you will. I'm just curious, are there documented instances of earthquake, tsunami, typhoon all at once, or other? Because I'm just picturing that would be terrible.
Yeah, that would be a bad culmination of things, and that's actually a lot of things emergency managers plan for. Like, what do we do in the case of, what if we have an earthquake and a tsunami during a tropical storm or a hurricane? Which can happen anywhere in the Pacific. And honestly, you could have it happen in the Caribbean, because it's a very active area for earthquakes and even small tsunamis as well. So, the culmination of things is something you worry about. Just to go back to my friend Laura, she just sent me, I was pretty good at reading the landscape. She is in Maui. So I could tell just by the scenery that it was definitely the southwest side of Maui, where a lot of people go, is pretty dry climate, so you don't see as much lush vegetation as you do other. But yeah, they're in Maui heading to higher ground.
Oh, wow.
And now it looks like there's 4 lanes of traffic. So one of the things I noticed there about the evacuation routes, they do counterflow from the coast. And if you've ever done hurricane evacuations, you're familiar with that, where both sides of the interstate or the highway
turn the direction around.
become. And on the Hawaiian Islands, there's no interstates. So there's only interstates on Oahu, which is like the city island, they call it. That's where there's actual interstates. That's where Honolulu is in the big city. But on these other islands, it's mostly just highways, like split highways and roads. So what they do is both sides of the road end up becoming the same direction to get people away from the coast. So that's what it looks like she's driving in right now, because both sides of the road are all going the same direction.
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild. I mean,
is she scared? I mean, I'd be terrified. She's probably there with her family.
She seems pretty calm. I don't know. She said the traffic looks heavy. It looks like 3 lanes of traffic going the same direction, so I can't imagine. And Maui, there's not a lot of people on Maui to begin with. that's the other thing about traveling in the Hawaiian Islands. Outside of Oahu, which I will say is very city-oriented on the south side, in Kauai, the north shore of Oahu and stuff, it's you feel like you're in the country. There's just not a lot of big buildings and stuff, so the infrastructure there, getting around is hard. Like we joked when we were there, you pull up something, oh, that's only 5 miles away, and it's like a 30-minute drive.
Oh, wow.
Because it's just hard to get around. There's only 2-lane roads.
Yeah.
There's tons of traffic circles and stop signs, and they're very good about not doing too much infrastructure because they want to keep the islands natural. And so you don't see about elevated roadways and on-ramps, off-ramps. It's a lot of 4-way stops, traffic circles, stoplights. So when you go a short distance, it's like it takes a long time to get places. So that's also why they warn so early, because they know it takes a long time for people to get from the coast to higher ground.
So, I mean, I'm just looking ahead here because we talked about things maybe being a couple hours out from some of these, particular locations that are being warned, like Hawaii, maybe in the overnight hours. If there's something that's coming, tsunami related, it would be in that period of time.
Yeah.
For folks who are following us here on WCNC Plus, obviously we've got the 11 o'clock news coming up. We'll keep you posted there as well. But, I mean, in the morning when people are waking up, how much are we going to be talking about this still? I'm just curious. Here on the East Coast.
It'll still be ongoing, and hopefully, it'll all be good news on like videos and pictures of small waves coming ashore and not massive destruction. But people will still be evacuating because, our time, it's probably going to be in the morning. So if you think about this, 6 o'clock there or 7 o'clock their time is going to be after midnight to 1 a.m. here. And then that probably will take another 6 hours for most of the waves. So yeah, right into our morning show, they'll probably still be evacuating, still be under a warning. And then you got to realize it's all going to go to the South Pacific. So if there's stuff happening on the west coast of South America, or say, parts of Australia or New Zealand or the South Pacific Islands, then they would be dealing with that through the early morning hours tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, it's just wild. I mean, I know from the discussions we had about magnitude and just, the incredible force in general that just exists on our planet, the capacity for, the way our planet in so many different ways can impact us, I'm amazed. And I'm amazed to think about just how many people around the world are watching this closely and worried, that this could be coming towards them.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think of the Indonesian earthquake. I was actually working that morning when that happened. And I remember at the time, running around, telling the producers, and this is a big, and no one really could grasp, this was a big deal until the video started coming in of the water. And then that became such a big story. And the one good thing about that, I think, is that most people now in the Indian Ocean and now the Pacific, they take these tsunamis very seriously. One of the things we learned from the Indonesian tsunami was the Pacific, there's no warning system in the Indian Ocean. We have the map, the maps and the stuff we're showing you is from this great organization that we have here in the United States. It's the U.S. Tsunami Warning System. The Pacific Warning System is based in Honolulu, Hawaii. I actually drove by it when I was there, and I remember seeing it where they go, this is a nondescript building. It's doesn't look like much, but that's where the Pacific Tsunami Warning branch is. It's a branch of the National Weather Service, and they're based there. Back in the 2011 Indonesian Ocean tsunami, they had no way to warn those countries in the Indian Ocean because they weren't responsible for that area. They tried to call people. They were reaching out to, representatives. I think they were reaching out to U.S. embassies and telling them, hey, there's a big tsunami coming. They didn't have a warning system, and now they do in the Indian Ocean. And people in the Pacific Ocean, because of all the visuals of that, and then obviously the Japanese earthquake in 2011 was another one. I think there's a lot of visuals, and we live in a world where people need to see threats to really grasp them. They don't really understand what an 8.7 earthquake is or what a tsunami is until they see the pictures. And so, thankfully, I think in most cases everybody will treat this very seriously. And hopefully it's just a 3 or 4 foot tsunami, and I'm not saying only. That would be a good thing if it's that small. It would just hopefully just cause minor issues on the coast and not cause massive destruction.
Yeah. We're coming up close to the top of the next hour. We've had continuous coverage, folks who are, maybe just hopping on here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus streaming of this massive earthquake. As Brad mentioned, one that's likely going to be in the top 10 of strongest earthquakes ever to strike. We've got these tsunami alerts that are underway, impacting parts of the U.S. We've got Hawaii, Alaska in particular, that are being warned. We also have parts of the west coast of continental U.S. that are under advisories as well. And, globally, this is having an impact. In fact, Russia, where this earthquake originated, this 8.8 magnitude earthquake originated, they have already reported a tsunami, according to multiple reports, heights of 10 to 13 feet. And the potentials now of some of these, outlying areas, if you will, the areas like Hawaii, Alaska, that are perhaps waiting hours at this point to see what exactly is coming their way. We're seeing, several feet estimated in some locations that are kind of on the higher end that could be seeing several feet high here of tsunami. But Brad, you had some really great explanations for folks. I don't know if you're seeing anything brand new that's coming in on your feed, but I think your explanation too of just what a tsunami is and what it looks like was really eye-opening to me, because I think a lot of people do have the imagery of it being a wave, and the fact that you were saying it's kind of just like the water lifting up.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rapid rise in water you would see in a tide. That's why sometimes it was referred to as a tidal wave. It really had nothing to do with tides, but because it looked like a rapid rise in the water you would see at a high tide, it doesn't come in as just like a crashing wave that you would surf on, though it can sometimes depending on where it is. It's just a rapid rise in water. It's just like all of a sudden the water would just come up and it doesn't go back down. And so it comes in quickly. And it's really hard for people to understand what you're seeing. And if you on the coast, and one of the first things, Mother Nature gives us some clues, the water will go out first, right? The water level drops because as a wave builds, you got to imagine, the water has to go back to build up into this peak, right? And then come in. And so there's troughs and crests in any wave pattern. That's what waves are. And so the first thing that gets to you usually is the trough. And the trough is when the water goes down. And so you see images from the Indonesian quake and even the Fukushima quake. The water goes out and all of a sudden all these reefs and fish and stuff are exposed. You see that, run. Get inland right away, because that means the water is going to come rushing back in tenfold. And one of the reasons we know there's a pretty strong tsunami risk is looking at the USGS page. They give you some great information, by the way. If you ever want to dive into data, they have this moment tensor plot, which basically shows you how the Earth moved, whether it was side to side or up or down. And their little plot shows this was all up and down, which means it was a megathrust quake, which means a thrust means the ground moved up or down, not side to side. And underwater, if you want to get an earthquake that doesn't cause a tsunami, side to side is what you want, not up and down, because up and down displaces water.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones that cause the biggest quakes. And that's why there's such a big risk from this, because of the type of quake, not just the size. The magnitude by itself would definitely jump off at you, but the type of quake was also a big part of why this is producing a tsunami.
Yeah. I mean, the way you described how the water drops, it just made me think about, like maybe in terms that some folks might understand, hurricane coverage. We used to talk all the time about reverse storm surge.
Oh, when the wind's blowing out.
And we'd always have to tell people to not play, when I, lived in Tampa, in the bay.
Yeah, they go out
because
and play.
they go, oh, the water's all gone from the bay. Where did it
back.
go? And sure enough, eventually it would come back. It almost kind of, visualized in my mind that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's exactly
because as
the
soon
same,
as the
but-
wind changes direction, all the water comes pushing back in. So it's reverse storm surge happens a lot in the Outer Banks, especially on the sound side, because the water, and sometimes that's detrimental to the sound side of the Outer Banks as the water gets pushed that way instead of coming in from the beach side. So definitely something we're going to have to watch the remainder of tonight. But just looking at the pictures and videos out of Hawaii, at least everybody's evacuating. Everyone's heading to higher ground. They've got until it's 10 o'clock our time. Looking at the time, it's probably going to be 12:17 a.m. when the first waves get there our time. That would be 7:17 their time, basically. Or, excuse me, about 1:17.